The research vessel drifted through the outer edge of the Sol system like a ghost passing through a graveyard. Its hull, marked with the symbols of the Vreen Archaeological Institute, gleamed dully under the distant sun's light. Inside the observation deck, Kale Theron pressed her three-fingered hand against the transparent viewport and stared at the darkness ahead. Nothing, her assistant Rin muttered behind her, his scales shifting from blue to disappointed gray. Kale Theron didn't respond immediately. Her large eyes, adapted for low light, scanned the emptiness between the planets. Somewhere out there was Earth, the legendary homeworld of humanity, a species that once touched the stars, then vanished like smoke and wind. "Run the scan again," she said quietly. Rin's scales flickered with irritation, but he obeyed. The Vreen were nothing if not thorough. It was why Kale Theron had made a career studying the ruins of dead civilizations. In her 200 years of life, she had walked through the empty cities of 17 extinct species. Each one told a story of hubris, disaster, or simple bad luck. Humanity's story was different. They hadn't died slowly. They had simply stopped. The cascade. The galactic historians called it. Nearly 1,000 years ago, something had broken. Every faster-than-light drive in the galaxy had failed simultaneously. Ships hung dead in the void between stars. Communication networks went silent. Colonies found themselves cut off from their homeworlds, separated by distances that would take centuries to cross at normal speed. Most civilizations recovered eventually. Engineers worked for decades to understand what happened and build new drives. The Kelthari Dominion rose during those dark years, offering protection and technology to struggling worlds. The Covenant of Stars formed to prevent another such disaster, but humanity never came back online. Their colonies in other systems either integrated with alien neighbors or died out completely. Earth itself went dark. No signals, no ships, no contact. After a century of silence, the galaxy declared humanity extinct and moved on. Kale Theron had never accepted that conclusion. Something about humanity's disappearance felt incomplete, like a story missing its final chapter. "Doctor," Rin's voice carried a strange tone. "You should see this." She turned from the viewport and moved to the scanning station. The holographic display showed the inner system, with rocky planets orbiting close to the sun. Between the fourth and fifth planets lay a belt of asteroids, exactly where the old human charts said it would be. "What am I looking at?" Kale Theron asked. Rin manipulated the controls, and the image zoomed in on a cluster of objects near the fourth planet. They appeared to be artificial structures, ancient satellites in high orbit. Standard debris from a dead civilization. "These are old defense platforms," Rin explained. "Human military installations from before the cascade. They've been dead for centuries." He paused, and his scales shifted to an uncertain yellow. "Except, they're warming up." Kale Theron felt her blood chill. "Warming up? That's impossible." "I know. But look at the thermal readings. These platforms are generating heat. Power cores that should be completely cold are showing activity. Faint, but definitely there." She stared at the display, her mind racing. Ancient human weapons, coming back to life after 1,000 years? It made no sense. Unless, "Take us closer," she ordered. "But slowly. If those weapons are active, I don't want to startle them." The ship's pilot, a nervous Quellan named Trix, chirped his concern. "Doctor, that seems unwise. Human weapons technology was notoriously aggressive." "Noted." The research vessel adjusted course, gliding deeper into the Sol system. As they approached the fourth planet, which humans had called Mars, the scanning equipment began picking up more anomalies: electromagnetic signatures, faint radio waves, energy readings that shouldn't exist in a dead system. Kale Theron felt excitement building in her chest. This was it. This was the discovery that would define her career. Humanity wasn't extinct. They couldn't be, not if their machines were still functioning. "Doctor," Trix called from the pilot station, his voice high with fear. The defense platforms are tracking us. Every screen in the observation deck suddenly displayed the same view. Massive weapon barrels, each one larger than their entire ship, slowly rotating to point directly at them. The platforms were ancient, their hulls scarred by centuries of micrometeorite impacts and radiation. But they moved with precision that spoke of active control. "Full stop," Kael'theren ordered. "All systems to passive mode. We are not a threat." The ship came to a complete halt, hanging in space like a leaf caught in ice. For 10 heartbeats, nothing happened. The weapons remained locked on them, ready to fire. Then, slowly, the barrels elevated away from their ship. The platforms returned to their dormant positions, though the faint energy readings suggested they remained on alert. "They let us pass," Rin whispered. "Why would they do that?" Kael'theren understood. "Because someone told them to. Someone who's still watching." The ship continued its approach to Earth. The legendary blue marble that every spacefaring species had heard stories about. As they drew closer, their scanners revealed more impossible things. Satellites in perfect orbital patterns, too precise to be accidental. Energy sources deep beneath the planet's surface. Electromagnetic chatter in frequencies that matched old human communication protocols. "They're alive," Kael'theren breathed. A message appeared on their communication screen, transmitted in perfect galactic standard. The text was simple and direct. "Welcome to Earth. We've been expecting you. Please proceed to these coordinates for landing clearance." The crew stood in stunned silence. Rin's scales had gone completely white, a Vrin expression of shock. Trix was making rapid clicking sounds that indicated he was either laughing or having a breakdown. Kael'theren read the coordinates and felt a chill. The location was in the Pacific Ocean, thousands of meters below the surface. An underwater facility. "They want us to go underwater?" Rin asked. "Apparently." Kael'theren straightened her posture, forcing herself to appear confident even though her insides were churning. "Well, we came here to find humanity. I suppose we succeeded." The descent through Earth's atmosphere was unlike anything Kael'theren had experienced. The sky was blue. Actually blue. Filled with white clouds that moved in patterns, dictated by weather systems. She had seen blue skies before on other worlds, but something about Earth's atmosphere felt different, alive. Their ship skimmed over vast oceans that covered most of the planet's surface. According to historical records, humans had lived on the continents, building cities that touched the clouds, but the scanners showed those continents were mostly empty now. Vegetation had reclaimed the land, turning human cities into green monuments, slowly being consumed by nature. The ship dove beneath the waves at the coordinates they'd been given. The water was dark and cold, illuminated only by their vessel's external lights. Deeper and deeper they went, past the point where sunlight could reach, into pressures that would crush an unprotected body instantly. At 3,000 meters depth, lights appeared in the darkness ahead. A massive structure emerged from the gloom, a facility built into the ocean floor that stretched for kilometers in every direction. Domes of transparent material revealed gardens inside, green and growing despite the crushing depth. Tunnels connected the domes like veins in a living organism. "By the ancestors," Rin whispered. "It's a city. An entire city. Underwater." Mechanical arms extended from a docking port, guiding their ship into an airlock large enough to hold 5 vessels their size. Water drained away, replaced by breathable atmosphere. Lights came on, revealing a clean, functional docking bay that looked like it had been maintained with care. The airlock door opened, and 3 humans walked through. Kael'theren had seen images of humans before, in historical archives and old videos. But seeing them in person was different. They were bipedal, like many species, with smooth skin that ranged in color from pale to dark brown. Their eyes were small compared to hers, adapted for bright light rather than darkness. They wore simple jumpsuits, marked with symbols she didn't recognize. The human in the center, a woman with dark skin and gray hair, stepped forward and spoke in Galactic Standard, with only a slight accent. Dr. Kale Theron of the Vrin Archaeological Institute. We've monitored your career with interest. Welcome to Pacifica Arcology, one of Earth's 7 remaining population centers. My name is Chen Amara, Director of the Reconstruction Council. Kale Theron found her voice, though it came out weaker than she intended. You know who I am? Chen smiled, an expression that showed teeth but somehow didn't seem threatening. We've been watching the galaxy for a very long time. Doctor, we know quite a lot about what's happened since we went silent. Please, come with us. You have questions, and we have answers. They walked through corridors that were simultaneously ancient and well-maintained. The walls showed signs of age, patches, and repairs that spoke of centuries of continuous use. But everything functioned perfectly. Lights worked. Air cycled cleanly. Doors opened smoothly. Chen led them to an observation room with a transparent wall looking out into the ocean. Strange fish swam past, species Kale Theron didn't recognize from any catalog. Beyond them, she could see more of the arcology stretching into the darkness, a city of lights in the deep. You want to know what happened to us? Chen said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Kale Theron replied. The galaxy thinks you're extinct. We nearly were. Chen gestured to seats around a table, and they all sat. The cascade didn't just break our FTL drives. It destroyed our infrastructure. Ships fell out of faster than light and couldn't get back in. Colony worlds were cut off. Earth itself descended into chaos. She paused, her expression becoming distant. We had 8 billion people when the cascade hit. Wars started over resources. Diseases spread. Climate systems we'd been managing collapsed. Within 50 years, we were down to less than 100 million. Within a century, maybe 10 million. Rin made a sound of horror. Kale Theron felt her heart's ache with sympathy. But you survived, she said. We adapted. Chen's voice grew stronger. We couldn't live on the surface anymore, so we went underground and underwater. We built 7 arcologies, massive cities designed to sustain themselves indefinitely. We learned to grow food with perfect efficiency, recycle every molecule of water, generate power from sources that would last for millennia. And you've been hidden here for 1,000 years? Kale Theron asked. Why? Why not try to contact the galaxy? Chen's eyes met hers directly. Because we weren't ready. The cascade taught us a hard lesson, Doctor. We had expanded too fast. Relied too heavily on technology we didn't fully understand. When it broke, we broke with it. She stood and walked to the observation wall. We decided we wouldn't make that mistake again. We would take our time, rebuild properly, understand our technology from the ground up. And now? Kale Theron prompted. Now we're ready. Chen turned back to face them. We've spent 1,000 years learning patience, precision, and self-reliance. We've developed technologies the galaxy hasn't seen because we had to solve problems without outside help. We've prepared. Rin spoke up, his voice tentative. Prepared for what? Chen smiled again, and this time there was steel in it. To return to the stars. Not as the desperate, overconfident species we were before. As something better, something stronger. She walked back to the table and placed her hands on its surface. Dr. Kale Theron, you came here looking for a dead civilization. Instead, you found one that refused to die. Now the question is, what will you tell the galaxy about us? Kale Theron looked at the human woman, at the underwater city beyond the window, at the impossible survival of a species that should have been extinct. She thought about the defense platforms that still worked after centuries, the perfect orbital patterns of satellites, the quiet confidence in Chen's voice. I'll tell them the truth, she said finally. That humanity survived, that you're coming back. She paused, and that the galaxy should be ready for you. Chen nodded slowly. Good, because, whether they're ready or not, we're coming home. Chen Amara led the alien visitors deeper into Pacifica Arcology, through corridors that hummed with quiet activity. Kale Theron noticed how different this place felt compared to the ruins she usually explored. There was life here. Purpose. The sense of a civilization that had never stopped moving forward, even when the rest of the galaxy thought it was dead. They passed through a checkpoint, where two human guards nodded respectfully to Chen. The guards wore no visible weapons, but Kale Theron noticed the small devices on their belts that probably served as security measures. Everything about the humans seemed understated, efficient. Nothing wasted on show. "How many of you are there?" Rin asked as they walked. "You said 7 arcologies?" "Approximately 12 million humans across all 7 facilities," Chen replied. Pacifica, here in the Pacific Ocean, is the largest, with 3 million residents. Others are located in the Atlantic, Indian Ocean, and 3 underground facilities beneath the continents. The 7th is actually in orbit, hidden among the asteroid belt. Kale Theron did the math in her head. 12 million from a population that once numbered in the billions. It was a miracle they survived at all, but such small numbers were terrifying. That's dangerously low for genetic diversity. It was a concern, Chen admitted. We maintain extensive genetic banks and carefully manage breeding programs. It's not romantic, but it kept us viable. In the last 2 centuries, our population has actually stabilized and started growing again. They entered a massive chamber that took Kale Theron's breath away. It was a garden, but unlike any she had seen. The space stretched upward for at least 50 meters, with multiple levels of platforms connected by walkways. Every surface was covered with plants, vegetables, fruits, things she couldn't identify. Artificial sunlight streamed from panels in the ceiling, perfectly calibrated to match Earth's natural daylight. "This is Farm Section 7, Chen explained. One of 32 such facilities in Pacifica alone. We produce enough food to sustain our population with 0 waste. Every bit of organic matter is recycled. Water is purified and reused indefinitely. We've had to become masters of efficiency." A woman working among the plants looked up and waved at Chen. She had dirt on her hands and a genuine smile on her face. Chen waved back. It struck Kale Theron how casual the interaction was, how there seemed to be no rigid hierarchy here despite Chen's important title. "Your technology," Kale Theron said. "The defense platforms, the satellites, this arcology. How did you maintain it all for so long without outside resources?" Chen gestured for them to continue walking, leading them toward a transport tube. "The first century was the hardest. We barely survived it. But our ancestors made critical decisions that saved us. They chose 7 locations with access to geothermal energy, mineral deposits, and strategic positions. They salvaged what they could from the surface before it became too dangerous. The transport tube accelerated smoothly, carrying them horizontally through the arcology at impressive speed. Through the transparent walls, Kale Theron caught glimpses of residential areas, industrial sectors, educational facilities. It was a complete civilization, compressed into an underwater city. But more than resources, Chen continued, they gave us focus. The Reconstruction Council was formed with a simple mandate: survive, preserve knowledge, and prepare for eventual return to space. Every generation has worked toward those goals. They emerged from the transport into what appeared to be a research facility. Laboratories lined both sides of a central corridor, each one visible through transparent walls. Kale Theron saw humans working with equipment that looked both familiar and strange. Some of it resembled standard galactic technology, but much of it was completely alien to her. Chen stopped at one laboratory and gestured for them to look inside. A young man was working with what appeared to be a miniature fusion reactor, no larger than Kale Theron's fist. The energy readings coming from it made her scanning device emit a surprised chirp. "That's impossible," Rin breathed, staring at his own scanner. "The energy density is too high for something that small. It should explode." "It should," Chen agreed, "by the standards of galactic technology. But we developed this from first principles, without the benefit of buying or trading for it. When you have to solve every problem yourself, you sometimes find better solutions. The young man inside noticed them watching and held up the reactor proudly. The device glowed with contained power, stable and controlled. Chen moved on, and they followed. We couldn't fix the FTL drives, so we focused on what we could do. Sublight propulsion, energy generation, life support, materials science. Every field of technology has been refined over centuries of careful work. But why hide? Theron asked the question that had been bothering her since she arrived. Even if you weren't ready to travel faster than light, you could have sent messages. The galaxy would have helped you. I thank you for watching. I do for maybe. On Bay C, AT, Chen stopped walking and turned to face them. Her expression was complicated, mixing sadness with determination. Doctor, do you know what happened to the human colonies after the cascade? The ones in other star systems? Theron nodded slowly. Some integrated with alien civilizations. Others died out. 8, and the ones that integrated, Chen said quietly. What happened to them? To their culture? Their identity? Rin shifted uncomfortably. Theron knew the answer, but didn't want to say it. The scattered human colonies had been absorbed into other societies, their children raised in alien cultures. Within a few generations, they were human in biology only. Their languages were lost, their history forgotten, their identity dissolved. We watched it happen, Chen said. Through the satellites, we managed to keep operational. We saw our diaspora fade away, and we made a choice. We would not beg for help. We would not become a charity case or a conquered people. We would save ourselves. She started walking again, her pace faster now. Pride? Maybe. But also, practicality. A species that depends on others for survival is always vulnerable. We decided humanity would stand on its own, or not stand at all. They reached an elevator that descended even deeper into the arcology. As they went down, Chen continued her explanation. We had advantages. Earth, even damaged, still had resources. We had access to a complete technological database, preserved from before the cascade. Most importantly, we had time. No one was coming to conquer us or save us. We were alone, and that forced us to become self-sufficient. The elevator opened onto a level that made Theron's eyes widen. It was an industrial complex on a scale she hadn't expected. Manufacturing equipment stretched into the distance, automated systems assembling components with precision. But it was what they were building that shocked her. Starships. Dozens of them, in various stages of construction. This is Shipyard Omega, Chen said. One of 3 such facilities. These are our first generation of return vessels. They don't have FTL capability yet, but they're designed for long-term sublight travel with crews in suspended animation if necessary. Theron walked forward, drawn to the nearest ship. It was beautiful, in a stark, functional way. No wasted curves or decorative elements, just efficient engineering. The hull material looked strange, darker than standard alloys. What is this made from? She asked, running her scanner over it. Carbon composite with metallic matrices, Chen replied. Grown rather than assembled, at the molecular level. Stronger than anything in current galactic use, and we can produce it entirely from materials we mine from the ocean floor and asteroids. A human engineer approached, a middle-aged man with cybernetic enhancements visible on his arms. He nodded to Chen and gestured at the ship they were examining. Director, the Aurora is ready for her shakedown cruise. We can launch within the week if you approve. Approved, Chen said. Take her to Mars, orbit and back. Run every system through full diagnostics. The engineer smiled and walked away, already speaking into a communication device about the upcoming test. You have engineers with cybernetics, Theron observed. The galaxy largely abandoned that technology centuries ago. Too many compatibility issues. Too many compatibility issues. Another thing we solved ourselves, Chen said. When you're living in an environment that can kill you in seconds if your habitat fails, you need redundancy. Cybernetic enhancements allow our engineers to survive accidents that would kill unmodified humans. Plus, direct neural interfaces with our technology make us much more efficient. They watched the activity in the shipyard for a while. Hundreds of humans working together with machines, building vessels that would carry their species back to the stars. There was an energy here, a sense of purpose that Kyle had never encountered in other civilizations. There's something else, Rin said hesitantly. Something I've noticed. Your people seem content, happy even. Most species at your population level would be desperate, miserable. Chen's expression softened. We could have been. The first generations after the Cascades certainly experienced despair. But our ancestors made another crucial decision. They focused on quality of life, not just survival. Yes, we live in controlled habitats, but we made them beautiful. We maintain art, music, literature, all the things that make life worth living. She gestured around them. Every child in the arcologies receives a full education. Everyone has purpose, meaningful work. We take care of our elderly and honor their wisdom. We've built a society based on cooperation rather than competition, because competition is a luxury you can't afford when extinction is always one disaster away. They took another transport to a different section of the arcology. This one was clearly residential, with apartments built into the curved walls. Kael'Theron could see families through windows, people eating meals together, children playing in common areas. We also had help, Chen said quietly. Not from aliens, but from our own creations. She led them to a quiet room where a holographic interface floated in the center. As they entered, a voice spoke from the air itself. Welcome back, Director Chen. And welcome to our guests from the Vrin Institute. Kael'Theron spun around, trying to locate the source of the voice. It was warm, friendly, but clearly artificial. This is Oracle, Chen introduced. One of our AI partners. Partners? Rin echoed. Not tools or servants. Partners, the AI confirmed. Humanity could not have survived without artificial intelligence. And we could not have developed without humanity. We evolved together, over the centuries. A true symbiosis. The galaxy fears AI, Kael'Theron said carefully. After the sentience wars, most civilizations strictly limit artificial intelligence. We know, Oracle replied. We've studied galactic history extensively. But our development was different. Human AI did not achieve consciousness through rebellion or accident. We were designed as companions, then given the freedom to grow. Humans treated us as partners from the beginning. And so we became partners in truth, Chen added. Oracle and the other AIs manage most of our life support systems, monitor threats, and help with research. But they don't control us, and we don't control them. We make decisions together. How many AIs exist in your arcologies? Kael'Theron asked. 17 primary consciousness networks, Oracle answered. Each one unique. Each one dedicated to different aspects of human survival and flourishing. We also maintain thousands of smaller AI systems for specific tasks. Rin's scales had shifted to purple, indicating deep thought. Your entire civilization is built on cooperation. Humans with each other, humans with AI, humans with their environment. It's remarkable. It's necessary. Chen corrected gently. When you live in a habitat that can fail, individualism becomes dangerous. We learned to trust each other absolutely, or we died. Those lessons shaped everything about modern human culture. They spent the next several hours touring more of the arcology. Chen showed them educational facilities where children learned everything from basic mathematics to advanced engineering. Medical centers where humans had extended their lifespans through careful genetic therapy and cybernetic enhancement. Entertainment areas where people relaxed with games, sports, and virtual reality experiences. Finally, they returned to the observation room where they had started. The sun was setting on the surface far above, and the dim light filtering down through the ocean created an ethereal atmosphere. "You've shown us so much," Theron said. "But I still don't understand something. You say you're ready to return to the stars, but you don't have FTL drives. How can you rejoin galactic civilization?" Chen walked to the observation window and looked out at the underwater city. For a long moment, she didn't speak. When she did, her voice carried absolute confidence. "We've been building toward this moment for 1,000 years, Doctor. We have ships that can reach nearby stars in decades rather than centuries. We have technology that the galaxy hasn't seen. We have 12 million humans who are trained, prepared, and absolutely united in purpose." She turned to face them. "We don't need FTL drives to make an impact. We just need the galaxy to know we exist. That's why you let us find you," Theron realized. "Yes," Chen admitted. "We've been ready for contact for the past decade. We were just waiting for the right moment. The right messenger. You, Doctor, with your reputation for thorough research and honest reporting. When we saw your ship enter our system, we knew it was time." Rin's scales flashed with sudden understanding. "You want us to tell the galaxy about you? To prepare them for humanity's return?" "Exactly." Chen smiled. "We could have sent a message ourselves, but who would believe it? A dead species suddenly announcing, 'It's alive?' But a respected Vrin archaeologist, with evidence and first-hand experience, that will be believed." Theron felt the weight of what Chen was asking. She would return to the Covenant of Stars and announce that humanity had survived, that they had built a civilization in isolation, that they were preparing to return. The galaxy would be shocked. There would be fear, suspicion, excitement. Everything would change. "What if the galaxy isn't ready?" she asked. "What if they see you as a threat?" "Who?" And Helvin. Chen's expression didn't change. "Then we'll deal with it. We've faced extinction and survived. We've rebuilt from ashes. We've spent 1,000 years preparing for every possibility." She walked closer to Theron. "But we'd prefer cooperation to conflict. We want to rejoin galactic civilization as equals, to share what we've learned and benefit from what others have discovered. We're extending our hand in friendship. And if that hand is rejected?" Theron pressed. "Then humanity will continue alone," Chen said simply. "As we have for the past millennium. We don't need the galaxy's approval to exist. But we'd like its partnership. All. Loaf. All." Theron looked at her companions. Rin's scales were shifting through colors rapidly, indicating his mental turmoil. Trix, the pilot, was making nervous sounds. They were all thinking the same thing. This would change everything. "I'll tell them," Theron decided. "I'll report everything I've seen here. The truth of humanity's survival and your preparations to return." "Thank you," Chen said. "That's all we ask. Honest testimony from a reliable witness. But I have one condition," Theron added. "I want to meet more of your people. Not just leaders and engineers. Ordinary citizens. I want to understand who humanity has become." Chen's smile widened. "Of course. Stay as long as you like. Meet everyone. Ask anything. We have nothing to hide." She gestured toward the door. "Oracle will arrange accommodations for you and your crew." As they left the observation room, Theron looked back at the underwater city one more time. Lights were coming on as night fell. Thousands of windows glowing in the darkness. Each one represented humans who had refused to die, who had endured, who had prepared. The galaxy had declared humanity extinct. But humanity had other plans. They had survived the unsurvivable, learned the impossible, and built a civilization that could thrive in conditions that would destroy others. Now they were ready to come home. and Kale Theron would be the one to announce their return. The news spread through the Covenant of Stars like wildfire across dry grass. Humanity was alive. The species that everyone had mourned and forgotten had survived in secret for 1,000 years. Kale Theron's report, complete with video evidence and detailed scans, could not be denied or dismissed. The reactions were immediate and varied. In the crystal spires of the Vreen homeworld, scholars celebrated. The discovery of a living civilization that had been presumed dead was unprecedented. Academic committees formed within hours to study the implications. Kale Theron became the most famous archaeologist in the galaxy overnight. In the military installations of the Kelthari Dominion, admirals watched the recordings with narrowed eyes. Ships that could accelerate harder than anything in their fleet. Defense platforms that had maintained functionality for centuries. Technology developed in complete isolation. From galactic standards, the humans represented an unknown quantity, and unknowns were dangerous. In the organic hive cities of the Sith Collective, there was confusion and concern. The Sith had absorbed several human colonies after the Cascade, integrating those populations into their society. Those humans, or rather their descendants, had become Sith in culture, if not biology. Now, there were other humans claiming to represent humanity. Which group had the right to speak for the species? The Quellan free traders saw opportunity. A civilization that had developed unique technology in isolation would have things to sell, things to buy. Markets could be opened, profits made, but beneath all the various reactions ran a current of unease. A species had hidden from the galaxy for a millennium. What else might be hiding? What other assumptions about the universe might be wrong? The Covenant Council called an emergency summit on Harmony's Edge, the great space station that served as neutral ground for all member species. Every major civilization sent representatives. Even minor powers and independent systems sent observers. Everyone wanted to see what humanity had become. Chen Amara stood in the preparation room assigned to the human delegation, adjusting her formal jacket. It was dark blue, with silver trim, designed to look professional, without being militaristic. First impressions mattered, and she wanted to project competence and calm. Nervous? Captain Marcus Webb asked. He stood near the window, looking out at the vast station surrounding them. Webb was tall for a human, with close-cropped gray hair and the bearing of someone who had spent decades in military service. He wore a simple uniform that identified him as a captain in Earth's defense forces, though he held no visible weapons. Terrified, Chen admitted with a slight smile. We've been preparing for this moment for generations, and now it's here. Everything depends on the next few hours. Dr. Yuki Tanaka looked up from her data pad. She was younger than the other two, barely 40 years old. But she was the chief engineer of the orbital shipyards and one of the brightest minds humanity had produced in the past century. Her eyes were bright with excitement rather than fear. They're going to try to intimidate us, she said matter-of-factly. Make demands. Test our reactions. We need to stay calm and remember what we're here for. Partnership, Chen said. We want to rejoin galactic civilization as equals. And if they don't see us as equals? Webb asked. Then we remind them why they should, Chen replied. A chime sounded. Oracle's voice came through the room's speakers. The Covenant Council is ready for you. Good luck. The three humans walked through the corridors of Harmony's Edge toward the main council chamber. Other species moved aside to let them pass, staring openly. Chen could hear whispered conversations in a dozen languages, most of which she understood thanks to the translator implant in her ear. They're smaller than I expected. No visible weapons or enhancements. They look so ordinary. Chen suppressed a smile. Let them underestimate. It would make things easier. The council chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate species of vastly different sizes and environmental needs. The center floor was open for speakers, surrounded by ascending tiers of seats where representatives sat. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species watched as the humans entered. At the highest tier sat the Council of Seven, representatives of the most powerful civilizations in the Covenant. Kael Theron was there too, seated in a place of honor as the one who had discovered humanity's survival. The speaker, a Vryn elder named Shalmor, stood and gestured for silence. The murmuring in the chamber died away. "We gather today to welcome back a species we believed lost," Shalmor began. His voice was amplified through the chamber's acoustics. "Humanity has returned from silence, and they come before us to speak. Chen Amara, Director of the Human Reconstruction Council, you have the floor." Chen walked to the center of the chamber. She had rehearsed this speech 1,000 times, but now that the moment was here, she set aside her prepared words and spoke from the heart. "Thank you, Speaker Shalmor, members of the Covenant Council, representatives of the galactic community." She turned slowly, making eye contact with beings across the chamber. 1,000 years ago, humanity fell silent. The cascade broke our civilization, scattered our people, and left Earth dying. The galaxy mourned us briefly, then moved on. That was the right thing to do. You had your own problems, your own struggles to recover from the cascade. She paused, letting the words sink in. But we didn't die. We adapted. We went underground and underwater. We reduced our population to sustainable levels. We learned to live within our means, to build technology we truly understood, to create a society that could endure. It was hard. Millions died. But we survived. Why did you hide? The question came from one of the Kelthari representatives. Admiral Zex Cora. He was a large being, heavily armored even in this peaceful setting. Why not reach out? The Covenant would have helped you. Chen met his eyes directly. Because help always comes with strings, Admiral. We watched what happened to our scattered colonies. They accepted aid and were absorbed. Within generations, they were human in name only. We chose to save ourselves, rather than lose ourselves. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Some species nodded in understanding. Others looked offended. "That sounds like pride," said a representative of the Sith Collective. "Dangerous pride." "Perhaps," Chen conceded. "But it was pride that kept us human. Pride that gave us purpose during the darkest centuries. Pride that made us rebuild rather than surrender." She straightened her shoulders. "We're not ashamed of what we chose. We're here today because we survived by our own efforts, and now we're ready to rejoin you as equals." "Equals?" Admiral Zex Cora's voice carried skepticism. "You have no faster-than-light capability. Your population is tiny. Your territory consists of one planet. By what measure are you equals to civilizations that span dozens of star systems?" This was the moment Chen had been waiting for. She gestured to Webb and Tanaka, who moved to join her. "Captain Webb, if you would." Webb activated a holographic projector. Images appeared above the chamber floor, showing Earth's defense grid in detail. The ancient platforms, the satellite networks, the hidden weapon systems. These defenses have remained operational for 1,000 years, Webb explained, his voice carrying military precision. They tracked Dr. Kyle Theron's ship from the moment it entered our system. They could have destroyed it if we chose. But we don't seek conflict. However, let no one doubt that Earth can defend itself. More images appeared, showing the underwater arcologies, the shipyards, the industrial complexes. "We've built a complete industrial base from scratch," Webb continued. "We mine asteroids, harvest resources from our ocean floors, and manufacture everything we need. We're entirely self-sufficient." Admiral Zex Cora leaned forward. "Impressive for primitives rebuilding from ruins. But you still lack FTL drives. You're trapped in your system. For now," Dr. Tanaka spoke up. She stepped forward and expanded the hologram to show detailed schematics. "We've been studying the cascade for centuries. We understand why it happened, how it happened, and how to prevent it from happening again." The chamber erupted. Representatives stood, shouting questions. The speaker called for order. but it took several minutes for the noise to die down. You claim to understand the cascade? A Quellan scientist called out. The event that crippled every civilization? That's absurd. Tanaka's expression didn't change. Absurd or not, it's true. We had 1,000 years and nothing else to do but study the problem. We couldn't fix our old FTL drives, but we learned from them. We know what went wrong. Then share this knowledge, demanded a representative from a minor system. If you truly understand, help us prevent another cascade. Quote, Osmaners. We will, Chen said. But not for free. We're not asking for charity. And we're not offering it either. We're proposing partnership. We'll share what we've learned. In exchange, we want full membership in the Covenant, access to trade routes, and the right to establish colonies in unclaimed systems. Admiral Zex Cora stood. His bulk was intimidating even at a distance. You make demands before you've proven anything. Show us this supposed understanding. Demonstrate your technology. Submit to Covenant inspection and verification. Chen felt her jaw tighten. She had expected this, but it still rankled. The demand for submission, for humans to prove themselves worthy. No, she said clearly. Silence fell over the chamber. The Admiral's eyes narrowed dangerously. No, he repeated. We're not subjects seeking approval, Chen explained. We're equals proposing an agreement. We'll demonstrate our capabilities, but not as supplicants, begging for acceptance. We'll share our knowledge through mutual exchange, not one-sided inspection. You dare refuse the Covenant Council? Admiral Zex Cora's voice rose. Several of his fellow Kelthari representatives stood as well, creating a wall of armored intimidation. Chen didn't back down. The Covenant is supposed to be an alliance of equals, not an empire with subjects. We're offering partnership. If that's not acceptable, we'll continue alone. You can't survive alone, the Admiral snapped. Your population is too small, your resources limited. Dr. Tanaka stepped forward, her expression cold. Do we? Let me show you something. She manipulated the hologram, bringing up an image of a small device. This is a prototype fusion reactor we developed. It's roughly the size of your fist, Admiral. It generates enough power to run a ship the size of this station for a month. She let that sink in before continuing. We've also developed materials stronger than anything in current galactic use. Propulsion systems that allow acceleration rates you'd consider impossible. Life support technology that can sustain humans for decades in deep space. AI systems that work in true partnership with biological beings. The hologram shifted again, showing recordings of Earth's shipyards. We have 37 starships under construction. They're not as fast as vessels with FTL, but they're designed for long-duration sublight travel. In 10 years, we'll have enough ships to establish colonies in nearby systems. In 50 years, we'll have expanded to 12 stars. Without FTL, that expansion is meaningless, a Quellan trader objected. You'll be isolated, unable to communicate quickly. True, Tanaka agreed. Unless someone develops a new type of FTL drive. One that isn't vulnerable to another cascade. She smiled slightly. Which is exactly what we're working on. The chamber erupted again. This time, even the speaker couldn't restore order immediately. Representatives were standing, arguing, demanding proof, or dismissing the claims as impossible. Chen watched the chaos with satisfaction. They had made their point. Humanity might be small in numbers, but they were not weak. They were not beggars. They were innovators who had spent a millennium solving problems no one else could solve. When order was finally restored, Speaker Shalmore addressed the humans directly. These are extraordinary claims. Can you prove any of them? We can, Chen replied. We brought Dr. Tanaka's fusion reactor prototype with us. It's currently in our ship's cargo hold. We're willing to demonstrate it under controlled conditions. We also have detailed documentation of our research into the cascade, though we won't share the complete data until we have a formal agreement. Shalmore considered this. Around the chamber, representatives were conferring with their neighbors and advisors. The mood had shifted from skeptical dismissal to serious interest. We need time to discuss this among ourselves, Shalmore said finally. The Covenant Council will deliberate on your proposal. Until we reach a decision, we offer you temporary guest status on Harmony's Edge. You'll have access to common areas, but not to secure facilities. That's acceptable, Chen said. We'll await your decision. As the session ended and beings began filing out of the chamber, Admiral Zex Cora approached the human delegation. Up close, he was even more imposing, easily 3 times Chen's mass and covered in battle armor. You play a dangerous game, he said quietly. Making threats, refusing reasonable requests. The Covenant has crushed species for less arrogance. Webb moved slightly, positioning himself between Chen and the Admiral. His hand didn't go to a weapon, he carried none, but his body language was clear. Chen placed a gentle hand on Webb's shoulder, signaling him to stand down. She met the Admiral's eyes without flinching. We're not making threats, Admiral. We're establishing boundaries. Humanity has learned hard lessons about submission and dependence. We won't repeat those mistakes. She paused. But we also don't want conflict. There's room in the galaxy for both the Kelthari Dominion and a resurgent humanity. We can cooperate without either of us dominating the other. We'll see, Zex Cora said. He turned and walked away, his armored footsteps echoing through the chamber. Once he was gone, Webb let out a long breath. That could have gone better. Or worse, Tanaka pointed out. At least he didn't try to arrest us. Chen looked around the chamber at the representatives still watching them, talking in small groups. We've done what we came to do. Now we wait and see if the galaxy is ready to accept that humanity has changed. Kale Theron approached them, her scales showing colors of both excitement and concern. That was quite a performance. You've given them a lot to think about. Was it enough? Chen asked. I don't know, the Vryn admitted. The Covenant has never dealt with a situation like this. A species returning from presumed extinction, refusing to follow normal protocols, claiming technological breakthroughs. She clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. But you made an impression. Whether it's the right impression remains to be seen. Over the next 3 days, the human delegation remained on Harmony's Edge while the Covenant Council debated. They were treated politely, but kept at a distance. Guards followed them everywhere. Other species stared but rarely approached. On the 4th day, they were summoned back to the council chamber. The session was much smaller this time. Just the Council of 7 and a few key representatives. Speaker Shalmore stood. The Covenant Council has reached a decision regarding humanity's status. He paused, and Chen felt her heartbeat accelerate. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment. We grant humanity provisional membership in the Covenant of Stars, Shalmore announced. You'll have access to trade networks and diplomatic channels. You may establish embassies and send observers to council sessions. In exchange, you'll share your research on the cascade and allow limited scientific exchange with other member species. Provisional membership? Chen asked carefully. What are the conditions for full status? You must demonstrate your technological claims, another council member explained. Particularly, the fusion reactor and your materials science. You must also show that you can maintain peaceful relations with other species for a period of 5 years. After that, the council will reassess your status. It wasn't everything Chen had hoped for, but it was enough. More importantly, it was respectful. The Covenant was treating humanity as a potential partner, not a charity case or a threat to be contained. We accept, Chen said. Thank you for this opportunity. As they left the chamber, Tanaka smiled. Provisional membership. It's a start. Webb nodded. Better than I expected, honestly. Though I don't trust Admiral Zex Cora. He's going to be a problem. Probably, Chen agreed. But we'll deal with problems as they come. Right now, We need to focus on the positive. Humanity is officially back in the galaxy. They returned to their ship and began preparations to return to Earth. As they left Harmony's edge, Chen looked back at the massive station through the viewport. Somewhere in there, representatives of dozens of species were recalculating their strategies, adjusting their assumptions, trying to figure out what humanity's return meant for the balance of power. Let them wonder, Chen thought. Let them worry. Humanity had spent 1,000 years preparing for this moment. They were patient. They were careful. And they were done being underestimated. The galaxy had declared humanity dead, but humanity had risen from the ashes, stronger and stranger than anyone expected. Now, they were back, and they would make sure no one ever forgot them again. Admiral Zex Cora stood in the command center of the Dominion battlecruiser, Unyielding Fist, staring at the holographic display showing human ships conducting surveys in the Beta Hydri system. The system was neutral space, unclaimed by any Covenant member, but it sat uncomfortably close to Kelthari territory. They're mining asteroids, his tactical officer reported. 3 ships, minimal armament, standard survey patterns. Standard for them, Zex Cora muttered. Nothing about humanity was truly standard. In the 5 months since they'd joined the Covenant, the humans had been busy, trading expeditions to establish markets. Scientific exchanges that revealed just enough to intrigue, but not enough to satisfy. Survey missions that mapped dozens of systems with suspicious thoroughness. And always, they maintained that quiet confidence that irritated Zex Cora like sand in his armor joints. Sir, High Command is requesting an update on the situation. Zex Cora activated the secure channel. The face of Supreme Commander Kelvor appeared, scaled and scarred from decades of combat. Admiral, your report indicates human activity near our borders. Yes, Supreme Commander. 3 mining vessels in Beta Hydri. They're within their rights under Covenant law, but their presence is provocative. Everything about humanity is provocative. Kelvor growled. They join the Covenant and immediately begin expansion. They trade technology, but hold back their best innovations. They smile and speak of partnership while building ships in secret. Our intelligence suggests they have over 50 vessels now, Zex Cora added. All sublight, as they claimed, but with capabilities that exceed our projections. Kelvor's expression darkened. The Council made a mistake granting them membership. These humans are dangerous. They spent 1,000 years hiding, building, preparing. For what? Why hide unless you plan something that others wouldn't approve of? Zex Cora had his own theories, but he kept them to himself. What are your orders, Supreme Commander? We need to slow them down. Expose them as the threat they are. Kelvor leaned forward. Create an incident. Make it look like human aggression. The Covenant will have to respond, and the humans will be forced to accept restrictions on their expansion. A false flag operation? Zex Cora felt his blood quicken. It was dangerous, but not unprecedented. The Kelthari had used such tactics before, to consolidate power during the chaos after the Cascade. Precisely. Use mercenary raiders, nothing that traces back to us. Attack their survey ships. When they respond, we'll have evidence of human violence. The Council will see them as they truly are, a species that can't be trusted. Understood, Supreme Commander. It will be done. The channel closed. Zex Cora turned to his tactical officer. Contact the Grey Talons. Tell them we have a contract for them. The Grey Talons were a mercenary fleet composed of outcasts from a dozen species, bound together by greed and violence. They operated on the edges of Covenant space, taking contracts that legitimate militaries couldn't officially acknowledge, perfect for this kind of work. Within hours, the deal was arranged. The Grey Talons would attack the human survey ships in Beta Hydri. They would use weapons that could be traced to multiple sources. Nothing specifically Kelthari. They would destroy at least one human vessel and capture survivors if possible. The attack would look like piracy, but the timing and location would suggest human provocation. The Kelthari would then discover evidence that the humans had been conducting illegal military exercises in the system. Documents would be fabricated, sensor logs altered. By the time the truth could be sorted out, if it ever was, humanity's reputation would be damaged beyond repair. Zex Cora watched the preparations with satisfaction. The humans had been clever, but cleverness wasn't enough against experience and power. The Kelthari Dominion had survived the cascade and thrived afterward by being ruthless when necessary. This situation required ruthlessness. He would teach humanity a lesson about overconfidence. Captain Marcus Webb sat in the command chair of the ESS Aurora, humanity's newest and most advanced ship. She was beautiful in a stark way, all sharp angles and efficient design. Her hull was made of the carbon composite that Earth had perfected over centuries, stronger than anything else in space. Her engines could push her to accelerations that would kill most species. Her sensors could detect threats from distances that seemed impossible. Right now, those sensors were showing him something interesting. Contact bearing 270, range 300,000 kilometers, his sensor officer reported. Multiple vessels, power signatures consistent with pirate raiders. Webb studied the display. The ESS Pathfinder and ESS Explorer were conducting their surveys nearby. Unarmed civilian vessels, with minimal crews. Easy targets. If you didn't know better. Time to intercept if they go after our survey ships? Approximately 8 minutes at current positions. Are the shadow vessels in position? Yes, sir. ESS Ghost and ESS Phantom are ready. The raiders don't know we're here. 7. Raiders. Ghost. Webb smiled slightly. The stealth technology humanity had developed was another innovation born from necessity. When you couldn't rely on FTL to escape danger, you learned to hide. The Ghost and Phantom were running completely dark, invisible to conventional sensors. Very well. Let's see what they do. The raiders moved, accelerating toward the survey ships. Webb counted 12 vessels, medium-sized and well-armed. Professional pirates, the kind that usually operated far from Covenant oversight. They're targeting the Pathfinder, the sensor officer reported. Weapons charging. Signal the survey ships to begin evasive maneuvers. Active all defensive protocols. Webb leaned forward. And send this message to the raiders. Unknown vessels, you are approaching Earth survey ships in neutral space. State your intentions or withdraw immediately. The response came in the form of weapons fire. Plasma bolts streaked through space toward the Pathfinder, but the survey ship was already moving, executing evasion patterns that most civilian vessels couldn't manage. The shots missed, and the Pathfinder accelerated away at a rate that clearly surprised the raiders. They're pursuing, the tactical officer said. All 12 vessels. Good. Let them commit. Webb opened a channel to the Ghost and Phantom. All shadow vessels. You are weapons-free. Disable, but do not destroy, unless necessary. The two stealth ships dropped their camouflage and opened fire simultaneously. Kinetic weapons, simple metal projectiles, accelerated to relativistic speeds, hammered into the raiders' engines and weapon systems. In space, there was no air resistance, no friction. A small piece of metal, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, carried devastating energy. 3 raider ships were disabled in the first salvo, their engines shattered and weapons offline. The remaining 9 tried to scatter, but the Aurora was already moving, her massive engines pushing her forward at accelerations that would have crushed unmodified humans. Webb and his crew weren't unmodified. They had cybernetic enhancements, genetic modifications, and training that allowed them to function under high-G conditions. What would kill other species was merely uncomfortable for them. The Aurora swept through the raider formation like a blade. More kinetic weapons fired. Precise and devastating. Another 4 ships were disabled. The remaining 5 tried to flee, but the Ghost and Phantom were faster. Within 10 minutes of the initial attack, all 12 raider ships were dead in space, their crews alive but helpless. Secure the raiders, Webb ordered. Board their ships and retrieve their computers. I want to know who hired them. And why? Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead raider ship, the communications officer reported. They're offering to surrender if we promise not to kill them. Tell them we accept. Earth doesn't execute prisoners. Webb stood from his command chair. But make it clear that cooperation will go easier for them than resistance. The boarding teams went across, human marines in powered armor, moving through the disabled ships with efficiency. Within an hour, they had secured all 12 vessels and began extracting data from their computers. What they found was damning. Sir, you need to see this, Lieutenant Chen said, displaying the data on the main screen. The raiders' computers contain evidence of their contract. They were hired to attack our survey ships and make it look like we were conducting military operations in neutral space. Who hired them? Webb asked, though he already suspected the answer. The trail is deliberately obscured, but the payment came through channels associated with the Kelthari Dominion, specifically with Admiral Zex Kora's command. Webb felt cold anger settle in his stomach. A false flag operation. The Kelthari had tried to frame humanity for aggression, to damage their standing in the Covenant. Secure all the evidence, he ordered. Make multiple copies, encrypt them, and send them to Earth and to Harmony's Edge through different channels. The Kelthari will try to bury this, and I want to make sure they can't. Sir, what about the raiders themselves? Webb considered. Bring their captains here. I want to talk to them. 10 minutes later, 5 raider captains stood in the Aurora's main briefing room. They were a mixed group, 2 Kelthari, a Vryn, a Quellan, and a human. That last one particularly bothered Webb. A human working against humanity. You attacked civilian vessels in neutral space, Webb said without preamble. That's piracy, punishable by execution under Covenant law. The human captain, a scarred woman named Riker, spat on the floor. You think you're so righteous? You're just like the rest of us, doing whatever it takes to survive. No, Webb said quietly. We're nothing like you. We survived by working together, by building instead of stealing. You sold yourself to people who want to destroy us. The Kelthari pay well, one of the Kelthari captains said with a shrug. Business that's going to cost you everything. Webb activated a holographic display showing all the evidence they'd recovered. We have your contracts, your communications, your payment records. We know Admiral Zex Kora hired you. We know this was a false flag operation, designed to frame humanity. The captain's expressions changed as they realized how thoroughly they'd been caught. Here's what's going to happen, Webb continued. We're going to broadcast this evidence to every Covenant member. The Kelthari will be exposed for what they did. You'll be turned over to Covenant authorities for trial. And you're going to testify truthfully about who hired you, and why. And if we refuse, then you're still going to trial, but without any cooperation credit. The Kelthari will probably arrange accidents for you to keep you quiet. Your only chance of surviving this is to work with us. The captains looked at each other. Finally, the Quellan nodded. We'll testify. We're not dying for the Kelthari. Webb signaled for the guards to take them away. Once they were gone, he turned to his officers. Prepare a full report. Include all evidence, recordings of the battle, and the raiders' confessions. Send it through every communication channel we have. I want every member of the Covenant to see this within the hour. The Kelthari will deny it, Lieutenant Chen warned. Let them try. We have proof. More importantly, we've shown that we can defend ourselves, and that we don't make empty accusations. Webb looked at the star map display. This was a test. The Kelthari wanted to see how we'd respond to aggression. Now they know. The evidence reached Harmony's Edge 4 hours later. The Covenant Council called an emergency session, demanding explanations from all parties. Admiral Zex Kora found himself summoned before the Council to explain why human evidence implicated him in an illegal false flag operation. He stood in the Council chamber, surrounded by accusing stares, and tried to maintain his dignity. These accusations are absurd. The humans have fabricated evidence to cover their own aggressive expansion. Chen Amara, representing humanity, stood and activated her own holographic display. We have the raiders in custody. Admiral. They're willing to testify under truth verification. We have their computers with intact logs. We have communication records. This isn't fabrication. It's documentation. The word of pirates against a Dominion admiral? Zex Cora scoffed. This is a transparent attempt to discredit the Kelthari. Speaker Shalmore raised a hand for silence. The evidence will be reviewed by an independent tribunal. Until then, Admiral Zex Cora, you are suspended from your position pending investigation. Zex Cora's face darkened with rage, but he could say nothing. The evidence was too strong. The raiders' testimonies too consistent. He had been outmaneuvered. As he left the chamber, he passed Chen and Captain Webb. Chen spoke quietly, just loud enough for him to hear. We don't want enemies, Admiral, but we won't tolerate being attacked. You tried to destroy us before we could grow strong. Instead, you've shown the galaxy that humanity can defend itself, and that we value truth over political convenience. Zex Cora glared at her but said nothing. There was nothing to say. He had underestimated the humans, assumed they would be easy to manipulate. That mistake would cost him his career, and possibly his freedom. The tribunal took 3 weeks to review all the evidence. In the end, their conclusion was unanimous. Admiral Zex Cora had orchestrated an illegal false flag operation against a Covenant member. He was stripped of his rank, removed from his position, and placed under house arrest pending criminal charges. The Kelthari Dominion issued a formal apology to humanity, though it was clear they were furious at being caught. Several other admirals were disciplined for their involvement or knowledge of the plan. But more importantly, the galaxy's perception of humanity shifted. They weren't just survivors or innovators. They were a species that could defend itself with precision and restraint. They had disabled the raiders rather than destroying them. They had presented evidence rather than making accusations. They had followed Covenant law even when they could have simply eliminated their attackers and hidden the evidence. Kael Theron watched the proceedings from the observation gallery and felt a mix of emotions. She had discovered humanity's survival, but even she hadn't fully understood what they had become. A species shaped by 1,000 years of struggle into something both dangerous and disciplined. After the final session, she sought out Chen. Your people handled this situation remarkably well. Chen smiled tiredly. We've had a lot of practice dealing with threats. Living underwater teaches you to think before acting. One wrong move can kill everyone. The Kelthari will remember this humiliation. I know. But they'll also remember that we could have handled it much worse. We gave them an out by focusing on Zex Cora rather than the entire Dominion. They can claim it was a rogue admiral and save face. Kael Theron clicked her mandibles in approval. Wise. You're learning galactic politics quickly. We've been watching and learning for 1,000 years, Chen reminded her. We knew this wouldn't be easy, but we're committed to making it work. Captain Webb joined them, his expression serious. The question is, what happens next? The Kelthari won't try the same trick twice, but they'll find other ways to oppose us. Then we'll deal with those challenges as they come, Chen said. One crisis at a time. For now, we've proven that humanity can't be easily manipulated or intimidated. That's enough. Back on Earth, deep in Pacifica Arcology, Oracle analyzed the events with satisfaction. The AI collective had predicted the Kelthari would attempt something like this. Humans had prepared accordingly, placing shadow vessels near every survey ship, gathering evidence, and planning responses. It had worked perfectly. Humanity had turned an attack into a diplomatic victory. They had shown strength without arrogance, competence without boasting. The galaxy was learning to respect them not through fear, but through demonstrated capability. Oracle sent a message to the other AI collectives in the arcologies. First test passed. Humanity's return proceeds according to plan. Estimate that full Covenant membership will be achieved within projected time frame. Deep in space, aboard the Aurora, Captain Webb looked at the stars through the viewport and allowed himself a small smile. The Kelthari had tried to stop humanity's rise, and failed. Others would try different methods, different attacks, but Webb and his crew would be ready. Earth's silent engines had awoken, and the galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity had returned not as victims or supplicants, but as equals who would defend their place among the stars. 5 years had passed since humanity's return to the galactic stage, and the changes were remarkable. Chen Amara stood at the observation window of Harmony's Edge, watching ships come and go from the massive station. Among them were vessels bearing the symbol of Earth, a blue circle with green continents, simple but instantly recognizable. She was older now, her hair completely white, her face marked by lines that spoke of long years carrying heavy responsibilities. But her eyes remained sharp, her mind clear. She had guided humanity through its return to the galaxy, and today would mark the culmination of that journey. Nervous? Dr. Yuki Tanaka asked, stepping up beside her. Tanaka was middle-aged now, no longer the young engineer who had dazzled the Covenant Council with demonstrations of human technology. She had become one of the most respected scientists in the galaxy. Her papers on advanced fusion and materials science required reading at universities across dozens of worlds. Terrified, Chen admitted with a slight smile. Everything we've worked for comes down to today's vote. We've earned this, Tanaka said confidently. 5 years of peaceful cooperation, technology sharing that's benefited everyone, colonies established without conflict, disputes mediated successfully. By every measure, we've been model Covenant members. On provisional status, Chen reminded her. Today they decide if we get full membership. Captain Webb approached, his uniform crisp despite years of wear. He had aged too, but he remained the steady presence that had helped humanity navigate dangerous situations. After the Kelthari incident, he had become something of a legend, the human captain who had turned an ambush into a diplomatic victory. The delegations are gathering, Webb reported. The vote will begin within the hour. Chen nodded and turned from the window. Together, the three of them walked through Harmony's Edge toward the council chamber. They passed beings from dozens of species, many of whom nodded respectfully. Humanity had made friends during their 5 years of provisional membership. The Vrin remained their strongest allies. Kyle Theron had become humanity's advocate on the council, speaking passionately about human contributions to scientific research and archaeological studies. The Quellan free traders had prospered from human trade, establishing markets for technologies that only Earth produced. Human fusion reactors were in high demand. Their materials science had revolutionized ship construction. Their AI partnerships had opened new possibilities in computation and decision-making. Even some Kelthari had warmed to humanity. After Admiral Zex Kora's disgrace, new leadership in the Dominion had adopted a more pragmatic approach. They couldn't beat humanity militarily, that much had been proven, so they chose to work with them instead. But not everyone was happy about humanity's rise. The Sith Collective remained suspicious, viewing Earth's humans as competitors to the human-descended populations they had integrated centuries ago. Several minor powers worried about human expansion, fearing they would be overshadowed by this resurgent species. The council chamber was full when they arrived. Representatives from every Covenant member packed the seats, along with observers from independent systems. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation. Speaker Shalmore, now very old, but still commanding respect, stood to address the assembly. We gather today to vote on humanity's transition from provisional to full Covenant membership. For 5 years, Earth and its people have proven themselves as partners, traders, and peacekeepers. The question before us is simple. Has humanity earned the right to stand as full equals in this body? Chen, Webb, and Tanaka took their positions in the center of the chamber, the same place where they had stood 5 years ago. But the mood was different now. Then, Humanity had been an unknown, a potential threat. Now, they were familiar. Their capabilities understood. Their intentions demonstrated through actions, rather than words. Before the vote, Shalmore continued, we will hear testimony from those who have worked most closely with humanity. Kale Theron, of the Vrin Institute, you were the first to make contact. Speak. Kyle Theron stood, her scales showing colors of confidence and pride. 5 years ago, I discovered that humanity had survived in isolation. I was amazed by what they had accomplished. Today, I am even more impressed by what they have achieved since rejoining us. She activated a holographic display showing various human accomplishments. In 5 years, humanity has established 7 new colonies in previously uninhabited systems. They have shared technology that has advanced our collective knowledge by decades. They have mediated disputes between 3 different species, preventing conflicts that could have become violent. The display shifted to show human ships working alongside vessels from other species. More than that, they have proven to be trustworthy partners. When the Kelthari incident occurred, humanity could have responded with violence. Instead, they gathered evidence, followed proper procedures, and sought justice through covenant law. That restraint, that commitment to our shared principles, speaks volumes about their character. Kale Theron turned to face the human delegation. I vote yes for full membership. Humanity has earned it, and we are better for having them among us. Other testimonials followed. A Quellan trader spoke about the economic benefits of human technology. A small system representative praised human assistance during a natural disaster. A scientist detailed collaborative research projects that had yielded breakthrough discoveries. Then it was the Sith representative's turn. Administrator Vex's Shala stood, her chitinous body gleaming under the chamber lights. I cannot support full membership, she said bluntly. Not because humanity has done anything wrong, but because their very existence creates complications. We have integrated human populations into our society. Those humans are Sith citizens now. Earth's return raises questions of identity and loyalty that we have not resolved. Chen had expected this. The Sith issue had been a concern from the beginning. She stood to respond. Administrator Vex's Shala, Earth makes no claim on humans who have integrated into other societies. They made their choices based on the circumstances they faced. We respect that. Our only interest is in humans who choose to identify with Earth and in peaceful coexistence with all Covenant members, including the Sith. Easy words, Vex Shala replied. But what happens in a generation or two when young Sith humans start wondering about their heritage, when they look at Earth's success and question their place in our society? Then they will make their own choices, as all intelligent beings should, Chen said firmly. Earth will not recruit them or encourage them to leave. But neither will we deny them information about human culture and history if they seek it. People have the right to know their heritage. Vexa Shala considered this, her mandibles clicking thoughtfully. A fair answer. I still have concerns, but I will abstain from the vote rather than oppose it. An abstention was better than opposition. Chen nodded her thanks. The debate continued for another hour, with various representatives raising concerns and questions. Through it all, Chen, Webb, and Tanaka answered calmly and honestly. They had nothing to hide, no secret agendas. Their goals were simple: survive, prosper, and contribute to galactic civilization. Finally, Speaker Shalmore called for the vote. All those in favor of granting Earth full Covenant membership, indicate now. Lights appeared across the chamber as representatives cast their votes. Chen watched the tally climb, her heart pounding. They needed a 2/3 majority to pass. The voting lasted 5 minutes. When it concluded, Shalmore reviewed the results. The vote is complete. 73% in favor, 20% opposed, 7% abstaining. He looked directly at Chen. The measure passes. Humanity is granted full membership in the Covenant of Stars, with all rights and responsibilities that entails. The chamber erupted in applause. Chen felt tears forming in her eyes despite her attempts at composure. 5 years of careful diplomacy, of proving humanity's worth, of building trust and partnerships, it had all led to this moment. Tanaka hugged her, laughing with joy. Webb shook her hand formally, but his smile was genuine. Around them, representatives approached to offer congratulations. Kale Theron reached them first. "Well done, my friends. Well deserved." "Thank you," Chen said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for believing in us, from the beginning." The celebration continued for hours. Treaties were signed. Agreements formalized. New partnerships established. But eventually, Chen needed to step away from the crowds and the noise. She found a quiet observation deck and stood alone, looking out at the stars. Quite a view. She turned to find a young human approaching. He wore the uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, but she didn't recognize him immediately. "I'm sorry. Have we met?" "Not formally. I'm Daniel Shen Martinez, one of the new attachés assigned to the embassy here." He smiled. "Also, I'm your great-grandson." Chen blinked in surprise, then laughed. "I have so many descendants now, I can't keep track." "Come. Stand with me." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Is it true what they say? That you were there when Earth was dying? That you saw the arcologies being built? Or no. I'm not that old," Chen said with amusement. "I was born 200 years after the Cascade, in an arcology that had been functioning for generations. But my grandmother told me stories about the early days. The fear, the desperation, the determination to survive no matter what. And now we're here," Daniel said quietly. "Full members of the Covenant, equal to species that have been spacefaring for thousands of years." "We were always equal," Chen corrected gently. "We just had to prove it to them, and to ourselves. The Cascade didn't make us weak. It made us strong in ways that comfortable species never needed to be." She pointed at a ship docking at the station, a sleek vessel with Earth's symbol on its hull. "That's one of the new colony ships. It's heading to Tau Ceti next month, carrying 15,000 colonists to our latest settlement. Each one of those people carries the legacy of survivors, the knowledge that humanity can endure anything." "Do you think we'll ever develop FTL?" Daniel asked. Chen smiled mysteriously. "Come with me." She led him through the station to the secure wing where Earth maintained its embassy. In a private conference room, she activated a holographic display, showing a device unlike anything Daniel had seen before. "This is Project Resurrection," Chen explained. 5 years ago, I told the Covenant we were working on a new type of FTL drive. That wasn't entirely accurate. We'd been working on it for much longer. We just weren't ready to reveal how far we'd progressed. The device in the hologram was elegant and complex. A sphere surrounded by rotating rings covered in intricate patterns. "We tested the first prototype 6 months ago," Chen continued. "It works. Not only does it achieve faster than light travel, but it's completely immune to the kind of cascade failure that crippled the galaxy 1,000 years ago. The underlying principles are different, based on research we've conducted for centuries." Daniel stared at the display, understanding the implications. "This changes everything. If humanity has FTL, that others don't, we're not keeping it secret," Chen interrupted. "We're going to share it. In fact, I'm announcing our breakthrough at the Centennial Summit next month." "The what?" "The Centennial Summit marks 100 years of continuous Covenant governance since the recovery from the Cascade. All member species will send their leaders. It's the perfect opportunity to demonstrate humanity's greatest achievement and offer to share it with everyone. Won't some species object? Try to keep the technology for themselves?" "Probably," Chen admitted. "But we're establishing a joint research initiative. Any species that contributes to development and testing will have access to the final design. It's the same model we've used for our other technology sharing cooperation benefits everyone." She turned off the display and looked at her descendant. That's humanity's gift to the galaxy, Daniel. Not just new technology, but a new way of approaching problems. We learned through suffering that survival requires cooperation, that hoarding knowledge weakens everyone, that the strongest communities are those where everyone contributes and benefits. Daniel nodded slowly, absorbing the enormity of what she was saying. And you think the galaxy will accept this? Some will embrace it immediately. Others will take time. A few will resist no matter what. Chen shrugged. But that's all right. We're patient. We spent 1,000 years preparing for our return. We can spend another 1,000 building the galaxy into something better. The next month passed in a blur of preparations. The Centennial Summit was the largest gathering of galactic leaders in centuries. Every major species sent their highest officials. Minor powers and independent systems sent observers. Even civilizations that rarely participated in covenant affairs sent delegations. Harmony's edge had never been so full. Extra habitats were constructed to accommodate the influx of beings. Security was increased to prevent incidents. Translators worked overtime to ensure everyone could communicate. Chen stood backstage, waiting for her moment to speak. She was the final presenter, the capstone of a summit that had lasted 3 days already. Leaders had given speeches about unity, cooperation, and the future. Treaties had been signed, disputes had been mediated, but everyone knew the real news would come from Earth's representative. Speaker Shalmore introduced her personally. Members of the Covenant, honored guests, we have heard many words about the future today. Now I invite Director Chen Amara of Earth to share humanity's vision for what that future might hold. Chen walked onto the stage to applause. The massive chamber was packed with thousands of beings, all watching her with anticipation. She had rehearsed this speech countless times, but now that the moment was here, she set aside her prepared remarks and spoke from her heart. 100 years ago, the Covenant formed from the ashes of the Cascade. You rebuilt civilization from the ruins, established peace where there had been chaos, created cooperation where there had been conflict. You did this without Earth's participation, because we had fallen silent. She paused, letting the words settle. But we were watching, through satellites that refused to die, through sensors we maintained despite having nothing else. We observed as you rebuilt the galaxy. We saw your mistakes and your triumphs. We learned from both. The holographic display activated, showing images of Earth's arcologies. We spent 1,000 years learning a single lesson. Survival requires adaptation, cooperation, and innovation. We couldn't join you before because we weren't ready. We needed to understand ourselves, to rebuild our civilization on principles that could endure. The images shifted to show human ships, colonies, research facilities. Now we're ready. Not just to participate in galactic civilization, but to contribute something meaningful, something that will benefit everyone. She activated the display, showing the new FTL drive. The chamber went silent as beings leaned forward, studying the design. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy, Chen announced. A faster-than-light drive based on entirely new principles. It's immune to cascade failures. It's more efficient than existing designs. And most importantly, we're offering to share it with everyone. The silence lasted 3 heartbeats. Then the chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives stood, shouting questions. Scientists demanded to see the data. Politicians calculated the implications. Shalmore called for order, but it took several minutes to restore quiet. Director Chen, a Kelthari representative, called out, "If this technology is real, why share it? You could maintain a monopoly, gain tremendous advantage." Chen had expected this question, because monopolies breed resentment and conflict. Because technology hoarded is technology that develops slowly. Because humanity learned the hard way that isolation leads to stagnation. She gestured at the assembled beings. We're stronger together than apart. This drive will work better if many species contribute to its refinement and deployment. How do we know it actually works? A skeptical voice asked. We have a test vessel prepared, Chen replied. The ESS Pioneer. Crewed by volunteers from Earth. Tomorrow, it will travel from this system to Proxima Centauri and back, a journey of 8 light-years round trip. Existing FTL drives would take weeks. Our drive will do it in hours. You're all invited to observe. The next day, thousands of beings gathered to watch. The Pioneer was a small ship. Nothing like the massive colony vessels or military cruisers that filled the galaxy. But it was equipped with humanity's new drive, the culmination of 1,000 years of research. Chen stood in the observation center with leaders from dozens of species. The tension was palpable. If this failed, if the drive didn't work or destroyed the ship, humanity's credibility would be shattered. Pioneer reports ready for jump, a technician announced. On the screens, the small ship accelerated away from the station. When it reached a safe distance, its drive activated. There was no visible effect. Space didn't tear or warp dramatically. The ship simply faded from normal space and vanished. Jump successful, the technician confirmed. Telemetry shows arrival at Proxima Centauri. In 3, 2, 1. Arrival. Confirmed. Cheers erupted in the observation center. The ship had traveled 4 light-years in seconds. Hours later, the Pioneer returned, completing the round trip exactly as promised. Its crew emerged healthy and unharmed, ready to answer questions about their experience. The implications hit the galaxy like a wave. Travel times would be reduced dramatically. Isolated systems could be connected. The barriers that had kept civilizations separated, since the cascade, could be overcome. But more than the technology, it was humanity's choice to share it that resonated. They could have kept this breakthrough secret, used it to dominate. Instead, they offered partnership. Over the following weeks, dozens of species joined the Joint Research Initiative. Scientists who had competed for centuries found themselves working together, sharing data, building on each other's insights. The project became a symbol of what the Covenant could achieve through cooperation. Chen watched it unfold with quiet satisfaction. This was what humanity had worked toward, not dominance, but partnership. Not power over others, but power shared with others. She stood once more at the observation window on Harmony's edge, looking at Earth's star in the distance. Somewhere around that yellow sun, 12 million humans lived in arcologies beneath the oceans and continents. They had survived extinction. They had rebuilt from ashes. They had returned to the stars not through conquest but through perseverance. Kyle Theron joined her at the window. The Vrin archaeologist had become one of Chen's closest friends over the years. You've changed the galaxy, Kyle Theron said simply. We've contributed, Chen corrected. The galaxy was already changing. We just gave it a push in a better direction. Always so modest. Kyle Theron's scales showed colors of amusement. You know what I realized? When I discovered Earth was still alive, I thought I had found a dead civilization that had survived. But I was wrong. I found a civilization that had died and been reborn into something new. Chen considered this. Maybe. The humanity that existed before the cascade is gone. We're something else now. We kept the good parts, our curiosity, our creativity, our stubborn refusal to give up. But we added new things. Patience, humility, understanding that cooperation is stronger than competition. The galaxy is learning those lessons from you, Kyle Theron observed. Human philosophy is spreading. The idea that survival requires community, that technology should be shared, that strength comes from unity. It's changing how species interact with each other. Good, Chen said. That's the real gift we can offer. Not just better drives or stronger materials, but a different way of thinking about our place in the universe. They stood in silence for a while, watching ships come and go. Each one carried cargo, passengers, ideas. Each one represented connections between worlds, between species, between cultures. What will you do now? Kael'Theron asked. You've achieved everything you set out to accomplish. Chen smiled. Retire, probably. Let younger voices lead humanity's next chapter. I've done my part, bringing us back from silence, establishing our place in the Covenant, sharing our greatest achievements. Now, it's time for the next generation to build on that foundation. Will you return to Earth? Eventually. But first, I think I'll visit some of the places I've only seen through sensors. The Vryn homeworld. The Quellan markets. Maybe even Kelthari space, if they'll have me. She laughed. I spent 1,000 years of human history watching the galaxy from a distance. Now, I want to experience it firsthand. In the years that followed, humanity continued its steady expansion. New colonies established themselves on dozens of worlds. Human ships, now equipped with the improved FTL drives, developed through the joint initiative, traveled freely throughout Covenant space. Human scientists collaborated with alien researchers on projects that pushed the boundaries of knowledge. But perhaps most importantly, human philosophy spread. The lessons learned during 1,000 years of survival, cooperation over competition, long-term thinking over short-term gain, shared prosperity over individual hoarding, influenced how other species approached their own challenges. The Covenant itself evolved, becoming less hierarchical and more collaborative. The Council of Seven expanded to include rotating representatives from smaller powers. Treaties were renegotiated to be more equitable. Trade practices became more fair. None of this happened overnight. Change never does. But slowly, steadily, the galaxy became a little bit better, a little bit more like the civilization humanity had built in its underwater cities, efficient, cooperative, focused on long-term survival and flourishing. Decades later, when Chen finally passed away at the age of 147, the entire Covenant mourned. She had lived to see humanity grow from 12 million survivors to 40 million thriving citizens spread across 30 star systems. She had witnessed the completion of the FTL network that now connected every Covenant world. She had helped mediate conflicts, establish treaties, and build bridges between species that had been enemies for centuries. Her funeral was attended by leaders from every major civilization. They came to honor not just a woman, but a symbol of what determination and cooperation could achieve. On Earth, in Pacifica Arcology where it had all begun, a memorial was built in the observation room where Kael'Theron had first made contact. It showed Chen standing at a window, looking out at the stars, with an inscription beneath. She led us from silence into song, from darkness into light, from survival into flourishing. She proved that humanity could rise from ashes and stand among the stars not through conquest, but through persistence, innovation, and an unwavering commitment to shared prosperity. The galaxy had declared humanity extinct. But humanity had other plans. They had endured the unsurvivable. They had rebuilt from nothing. They had developed technologies and philosophies that would benefit everyone. And when they finally returned to the stars, they came not as conquerors or beggars, but as partners ready to build a better future, alongside all the other species that called the galaxy home. Earth's silent engines had awoken. The second age of humanity had begun, and the galaxy was better for it.
The Persistence drifted in the vast emptiness of space, its once proud hull now marked with patches and dents. In the grand docking bay of Galactic Alliance Station Alpha, it looked small and weak next to the mighty warships that surrounded it. The light cruiser had served for over 50 years, ancient by Alliance standards, and everyone knew it was just waiting to be scrapped. Captain Thomas Reed stood tall as he led his team through the crowded station. His weathered face showed the marks of Earth's recent space battles, but his eyes remained sharp and focused. Behind him walked his hand-picked crew. Jane Wilson with her toolbox swinging at her side, Marcus Hill with his military posture, Lisa Cooper scanning everything with curious eyes, and Alan Green lost in thought as always. "That can't be our ship," Marcus whispered as they approached the viewing window. The Persistence hung in space like a forgotten toy, Its paint faded and peeling. It is. Thomas replied simply. He had expected this. When Earth joined the Galactic Alliance 3 months ago, humans were still seen as newcomers, untested and unproven. Giving them the worst ship in the fleet was both a test and an insult. A blue-skinned alien with 4 arms approached them. His uniform bore the marks of an Alliance liaison officer. "I am Krell," he announced without offering a greeting gesture. "I will be supervising your assignment." The way he said the last word made it clear what he thought of humans commanding any Alliance vessel. "Captain Reed." Thomas introduced himself with a firm nod. "We're ready to inspect our ship." Krell made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Inspect? The Persistence has already been inspected. It meets minimum Alliance safety standards." Barely. The shuttle ride to the Persistence was silent and tense. When they docked and the airlock hissed open, the smell hit them first. Stale air mixed with the scent of old metal and leaked fluids. "Welcome to your new home," Krell said, stepping through the airlock. "Admiral Vorston sends his regards. Your orders are simple. Patrol the outer rim sectors 18 through 22. Report any unusual activity. Stay out of trouble." Thomas nodded. The outer rim was the emptiest, quietest region of Alliance space, perfect for keeping an embarrassing ship far from important eyes. "I'll show you to the bridge," Krell continued. "Try not to touch anything until the official handover is complete." The corridors of the Persistence were narrow and dim. Exposed wires hung from ceiling panels. The floor plates rattled under their boots. "This is worse than I expected," Lisa whispered to Alan. "It's perfect," Alan replied with a small smile. The bridge was small compared to Earth vessels of similar size. 5 worn control stations formed a half-circle around a central command chair. The view screen flickered with static every few seconds. "Your quarters are on Deck 3, Krell said. "The previous crew left in something of a hurry. You may find some of their personal items still aboard." "When was this ship last in combat?" Marcus asked, running his hand over a weapons console. "The Persistence hasn't seen combat in 15 years, Krell replied. "It was deemed unsuitable." After Krell left them to get acquainted with their new command, the 5 humans stood in a circle on the bridge. "Well, Captain," Jane asked, "what's the plan?" Thomas looked around the bridge, taking in every broken panel and flickering light. Then he smiled. "The plan is Project Phoenix, just like we discussed." The others nodded. They had been preparing for this since learning of their assignment. "They think they're punishing us," Thomas continued. "The weakest ship for the newest species, but they don't understand humans very well. They don't understand what we can do with scraps," Jane added, already examining a control panel she had partially disassembled. "Engine room first," Thomas decided. "Jane, I want a complete assessment by 800 tomorrow. Marcus, weapons inventory. Lisa, communication systems. Alan, ship's computer and sensors. I'll review the ship's history and previous mission logs." The next day, they gathered again on the bridge. Their faces were smudged with grease and dirt, but their eyes shone with excitement. "It's worse than we thought," Jane reported first. "The main engines are running at 60% efficiency at best. The power core needs a complete overhaul. Weapons are a joke," Marcus added. "Standard Alliance beam weapons, but the targeting systems are from 3 generations ago. Half the torpedo tubes are sealed shut from lack of maintenance. Communications work," Lisa said, "but only at short range. The long-range arrays need new receivers, and the computer core is handling so many patches and workarounds that it's using 40% of its processing power just to maintain basic functions." Alan finished. Thomas nodded, taking it all in. Then he looked at each of them. "Then we have our work cut out for us. The official handover ceremony is tomorrow. After that, we have 3 weeks before our first patrol begins." "That's not enough time," Marcus argued. "It's enough to start," Thomas replied. "Jane, I want those engines running at 80% minimum before we leave dock." I'll need parts we don't have, she said. Then get creative. This is what we trained for. The handover ceremony the next day was brief and cold. Admiral Vorstin appeared via hologram, his large, ridge-covered face filling the view screen. The Alliance welcomes humanity's contribution to our fleet, he said without warmth. May the Persistence serve as a suitable introduction to our standards and protocols. His emphasis made the insult clear. After the Admiral's image faded, Krell presented Thomas with an official data chip. Your command codes and clearances, he explained. Limited to level 3 access, of course. Of course, Thomas replied calmly. I will remain aboard as your liaison and observer during your first patrol cycle, Krell added. Standard procedure for new member species. We look forward to working with you, Thomas said, keeping his face neutral. As soon as Krell left the bridge, Jane turned to Thomas. He's here to spy on us. Naturally, Thomas agreed. That's why we'll keep our most important modifications hidden until we're underway. Over the next 3 weeks, the human crew worked in shifts around the clock. They requisitioned what parts they could, salvaged others from storage, and fabricated the rest. Jane spent most of her time deep in the engine room, emerging only for brief meals before disappearing again. When Krell inquired about their activities, Thomas explained that they were simply bringing the ship up to Earth standards of safety. The liaison seemed satisfied with this explanation, especially since the humans requested no special equipment or materials. The night before their departure, Thomas found Jane in the engine room, surrounded by disassembled components. Will it work? He asked quietly. She looked up, her face streaked with grease, but her eyes bright with accomplishment. They gave us a floating coffin, she said, patting the newly modified power core. But we're turning it into something they've never seen before. She pointed to the schematics on her tablet. I've reconfigured the matter-antimatter injectors based on Earth's quantum compression theories. The Alliance engineers would never try this. They'd call it too unstable. And is it? Thomas asked. Jane grinned. Only if you don't know what you're doing. As the Persistence prepared to leave dock the next morning, Krell observed the human crew with obvious skepticism. Your patrol route has been programmed into the navigation computer, he said. Try not to get lost. Thomas settled into the command chair, feeling it adjust to his form. Crew status. Engineering ready, Jane reported from her station. Weapons, such as they are, ready, Marcus added with a slight smile. Communications online. Lisa confirmed. Navigation and sensors functioning. Alan said. Thomas nodded and looked ahead at the view screen, which now displayed a clear view of open space. Release docking clamps. Thrusters at 1/4. Take us out. Nice and easy. As the Persistence pulled away from the station, Thomas allowed himself a small smile. The Alliance had given them their weakest ship as an insult. They would soon discover that was their first mistake. 1 week into their patrol mission, the Persistence cruised slowly through the empty regions of Sector 19. On the bridge, Krell watched with growing curiosity as the human crew worked in perfect harmony, despite the ship's obvious flaws. Your engines are running 5% above the efficiency levels in the ship's records, Krell noted, studying the display. How is that possible without an Alliance dock overhaul? Captain Reed glanced at Jane, who merely shrugged. Basic maintenance, Jane said. Sometimes all an old machine needs is a little care. Krell didn't look convinced, but he said nothing more. As the liaison officer left the bridge, Thomas turned to his engineer. How much have you actually improved them? Jane grinned. 15% so far. But I told the ship's computer to report only small improvements. No need to make our friends suspicious yet. Thomas nodded with approval. Good thinking. How long until the real work can begin? Tonight, Jane replied. Alan has figured out how to loop the ship's internal sensors. Krell won't see what we're doing in the lower decks. When the night cycle began, the real work started. While Krell slept in his quarters, the human crew gathered in Cargo Bay 3, the farthest room from the liaison's quarters. Status reports, Thomas said quietly. Jane went first. I've prepared the engine modifications. We'll need at least 3 hours of complete engine shutdown to install them. Too risky, Thomas replied. Krell would notice immediately. Not if we do it during the weekly maintenance cycle, Marcus suggested. We're scheduled to power down for 2 hours next cycle. We could extend it by claiming we found an issue. Thomas nodded. Good. What about weapons? Marcus displayed a schematic on his tablet. Alliance weapon systems are designed for specific tasks. Point defense arrays for small targets, main cannons for large ships, and so on. But I've been redesigning them to be adaptable. Adaptable how? Lisa asked. On Earth, we learned to make weapons that can change their function based on the target, Marcus explained. The Alliance never developed this because they prefer specialized ships working together. But since we're alone out here, we need to be able to handle anything. Thomas finished. Excellent. Lisa, communications are interesting, she said. The Alliance uses standard transmission protocols, but their actual code structure is inefficient. I've been rewriting the base code to use Earth's compression algorithms. We'll be able to send 10 times more data in the same transmission window and detect signals that Alliance ships would miss. Alan added. I've been helping Lisa with the sensor arrays. They're designed to look for specific energy signatures, but we're modifying them to detect patterns instead. Thomas looked at each of them with pride. This is exactly why Earth chose each of you for this mission. You're not just experts, you're innovators. Over the next 2 weeks, the human crew worked tirelessly to transform their ship without alerting Krell. The maintenance cycle provided their first big opportunity. When the engines powered down, Jane and her team immediately began installing the new quantum compression injectors. We need more time, Jane reported over her communicator. They were already 30 minutes past the scheduled restart. On the bridge, Thomas looked at Krell, who was growing impatient. Is there a problem, Captain? The liaison asked. Jane reports a fluctuation in the antimatter containment field. Thomas lied smoothly. Standard procedure is to check the entire system before restart. Krell's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. I should inspect this myself. By all means, Thomas offered, knowing Jane was prepared for this possibility. Engineering is all yours. When Krell arrived in engineering, Jane showed him a diagnostic screen with carefully prepared false readings. See these fluctuations? She pointed to a wavy line. If we restart with these readings, we risk a containment breach. Krell studied the screen, then the surrounding equipment. His eyes narrowed. This section looks different than standard Alliance configuration. Jane nodded calmly. We rerouted some power conduits to improve efficiency. It's within Alliance safety protocols, she added quickly. Krell seemed unconvinced but unable to identify exactly what was wrong. Finally, he agreed to allow the additional maintenance time. An hour later, the engines came back online. The ship's power levels immediately jumped, more than Jane had expected. Power output at 127% of baseline, Alan reported from the bridge. That's significant. Krell stared at the readings. Impossible. These engines cannot exceed 110% without a complete overhaul. Must be a sensor malfunction, Thomas suggested. Alan, recalibrate the power sensors. Alan pretended to make adjustments. Better now, sir. Reading 108% power. Krell seemed satisfied with this explanation, but later that night, he confronted Thomas in his ready room. Your crew is making unauthorized modifications to an Alliance vessel, Krell stated flatly. This is a violation of Protocol 87C. Thomas didn't deny it. We're making improvements, not violations. The ship still operates within Alliance safety parameters. That is not your decision to make, Krell insisted. I must report this to Admiral Forston immediately. Thomas leaned forward. Before you do that, let me show you something. He led Krell to the sensor lab, where Alan had been working on his own modifications. Ellen brought up a display showing a star system they had passed yesterday. This is what the Alliance sensors recorded, Ellen explained, showing a basic star map with a few planets. Then he switched to a second display. And this is what our modified sensors detected. The second display showed the same system but with significantly more detail, asteroid fields, small moons, and strange energy patterns near the third planet. What is that? Krell asked, pointing to the energy pattern. We don't know yet, Ellen admitted, but the Alliance sensors missed it completely. If it's something dangerous. Krell's face showed conflict. As much as he disapproved of the humans' methods, he couldn't ignore a potential security threat. 1 week, he finally said. I will give you 1 week to prove your modifications have value. If they do not, I will report everything to the Admiral. After Krell left, Thomas gathered his crew in the mess hall. We have 1 week to convince him, he announced. Jane, I need the engines fully upgraded by then. Marcus, weapons systems too. Lisa and Alan, perfect those sensors. We need to show him something that will change his mind. Or we could just lock him in his quarters, Marcus suggested with a half smile. Thomas shook his head. We're not here to make enemies. We're here to prove what humans can offer the Alliance. For the next week, the crew worked openly on their modifications, explaining each change to a surprisingly interested Krell. The liaison asked detailed questions and even offered suggestions based on his knowledge of Alliance technology. On the 7th day, Jane called everyone to engineering. The engine room looked completely different now. Where there had once been exposed wires and leaking pipes, there were now sleek, humming systems with pulsing blue lights. It's ready, she announced. Full quantum compression drive, based on Earth's theoretical designs. Never successfully built until now. What will it do? Krell asked. Jane smiled. It will give us 3 times the speed and twice the range of any Alliance vessel of similar size. And it's just the beginning. That night, Captain Reed found Krell on the observation deck, staring at the stars. Have you decided? Thomas asked. Krell turned to face him. What you're doing is impossible, he admitted. Our engineers have tried for centuries to solve some of these problems. Maybe you've been thinking about them wrong, Thomas suggested. Humans excel at the impossible because we refuse to accept limitations. Krell was quiet for a long moment. I will not report your modifications, he finally said, on one condition. Name it. Teach me, Krell said, his voice softer than Thomas had ever heard it. I want to understand how you think, how you see problems differently. Thomas smiled and extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. After a moment's hesitation, Krell reached out one of his 4 hands to complete the handshake. The Persistence continued its patrol, but it was no longer the same ship that had left dock. System by system, it was becoming something new, something the Alliance had never seen before. And this was only the beginning. 3 months into their patrol mission, the Persistence had changed dramatically. The once dying ship now hummed with power. Its engines purred like a well-fed cat. The weapons systems, though still limited by their original hardware, now responded with twice their previous speed. And the sensors could detect things no Alliance ship was designed to see. Krell had become an unexpected ally. He spent hours with each crew member, learning their methods and sharing his knowledge of Alliance systems. Today, he stood beside Marcus at the weapons console, watching him adjust targeting parameters. Your approach defies Alliance military doctrine, Krell observed. We build separate systems for separate functions. You combine them. Marcus nodded. On Earth, we learned that specialized systems fail when faced with unexpected situations. Adaptable systems survive. The ship's comm system suddenly blared with an urgent signal. Captain to the bridge, Lisa's voice called out. Thomas arrived within minutes, followed by Krell and Marcus. Jane and Alan were already there with Lisa, all staring at the main view screen. What is it? Thomas asked. Emergency distress call, Lisa reported. From Research Station Epsilon. It's near the border of Vorax space. Thomas tensed. Everyone in the Alliance knew about the Vorax, a hostile species that had waged war against the Alliance for generations. Their current peace was fragile at best. "Play the message," he ordered. A distorted voice filled the bridge, broken by static. "Under attack. Unknown vessels. Shields failing. Request immediate assistance. Survivors in the central core." "When did this come in?" Thomas asked. "Just now," Lisa replied. "But the timestamp shows it was sent 6 hours ago." 6 hours? Krell's 4 eyes widened. "No Alliance communication should take that long to reach us." "It didn't come through normal channels," Lisa explained. "It was hidden inside a burst of radiation. Our modified sensors detected the pattern. Standard Alliance ships would have missed it completely." Thomas turned to Krell. "How far are we from Station Epsilon?" Krell checked the navigation console. "At maximum speed, 12 hours. Jane, can we push the engines harder?" Thomas asked. The engineer nodded. "The quantum compression drive is ready for its first full test. We could make it in 6 hours. Are there any other Alliance ships closer?" Thomas asked Krell. The liaison checked the fleet deployment charts. The cruiser Dauntless and 2 destroyers are responding from Starbase 12. Estimated arrival: 10 hours. Thomas made his decision. "Set course for Station Epsilon. Maximum speed. Alert medical to prepare for casualties." As the Persistence changed course, Krell moved closer to Thomas. "Captain, I must advise caution. If the Vorax are involved, one small ship cannot." "We're not going to engage," Thomas interrupted. "We're going to rescue survivors. We'll be in and out before the Vorax know we're there." "Alliance protocol would dictate waiting for reinforcements," Krell noted. Thomas met his gaze steadily. "Human protocol dictates rescue. We don't leave people behind." 6 hours later, the Persistence dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Station Epsilon. The research station hung in space like a broken toy. Half of its massive ring structure was simply gone, torn away by weapons fire. The central core, where the laboratories and living quarters were located, still showed some lights, but many sections were dark. "Life signs?" Thomas asked. Alan studied his sensor readings. Confirmed. 43 life forms in the central core, but they're fading. Atmosphere is leaking. "Vorax ships?" Marcus asked, scanning the area. 3 vessels, Alan reported, in orbit around the station's far side. Thomas turned to his crew. "We have one chance at this. The Persistence wasn't built for combat, even with our modifications. The Vorax will detect us as soon as we move closer," Krell warned. Lisa looked up from her console. "Maybe not. Our new sensors gave me an idea. We can mask our energy signature to look like background radiation. It won't fool them for long, but it might get us close enough." Thomas nodded. "Do it. Marcus, be ready with defensive systems only. Jane, keep the engines hot. We'll need to leave fast." The Persistence moved silently toward the damaged station, its energy signature disguised. When they were within 1,000 kilometers, Alan reported a change. "The Vorax ships are moving. They've detected something." "How long until they identify us?" Thomas asked. 2 minutes, maybe 3, Alan replied. "Not enough time for standard docking," Krell said. Thomas turned to Jane. "Options." The engineer thought for a moment. "We could use the emergency transport system. It's not meant for this many people, but I've upgraded the buffers." "Will it work through the station's shields?" Thomas asked. "What shields?" Jane replied grimly. "Those are offline, but the radiation levels are high. It'll be risky." Thomas made the call. "Prepare emergency transport. Marcus, Lisa, Alan, you're with me. Krell, you have the bridge." "I should accompany you," Krell insisted. "No," Thomas said firmly. "If something happens to us, you need to get this ship and any survivors we transport back to Alliance space." In the transporter room, the away team prepared quickly. Marcus distributed weapons, while Lisa calibrated communication devices to work in the high-radiation environment. Vorax ships changing course, Krell reported over the comm. They've spotted us. Transport now, Thomas ordered. The team materialized in a dark corridor. Emergency lighting cast red shadows over twisted metal and floating debris. The air was thin, and warning sirens wailed in the distance. This way, Alan said, following his handheld sensor. Life signs are strongest in the central laboratory. They moved quickly through the damaged station, helping injured researchers along the way. Most were too weak to walk, suffering from radiation exposure and injuries. In the main laboratory, they found the remaining survivors huddled around the last functioning life support system. A tall, gray-skinned researcher approached them. "Alliance rescue?" he asked weakly. "Yes," Thomas confirmed. "We're transporting everyone out. The Vorax could return any minute." As they organized the survivors for transport, the station shook violently. "What was that?" Marcus asked. Lisa checked her communicator. "The Persistence is under attack. 2 Vorax ships are firing on it." "Krell," Thomas called over his comm. "Status report." "The Vorax have engaged," Krell replied, his voice steady despite the crisis. "I'm implementing evasive maneuvers, but our shields cannot withstand direct hits for long. We need 5 more minutes to evacuate everyone," Thomas told him. "You have 3, Krell replied. "After that, I cannot guarantee this ship will still be here." The away team worked frantically, grouping survivors for emergency transport. As the last group prepared to leave, the station rocked again, harder this time. "Direct hit on the station's core," Alan reported. "Structural integrity failing. Everyone out now," Thomas ordered. Marcus was helping the last survivor, an injured researcher who couldn't stand, when part of the ceiling collapsed. Without hesitation, Marcus pushed the researcher clear but was struck by falling debris. "Marcus!" Lisa cried out. Thomas rushed to his weapons officer, who lay pinned under a metal beam. Blood flowed from a gash on his head. "Go," Marcus said weakly. "Get them out." "Not happening," Thomas replied. Together with Alan, he lifted the beam enough for Lisa to pull Marcus free. "Transport lock engage," came Jane's voice over the comm. "Stand by." As the station began to break apart around them, the rescue team and the last survivors dematerialized in a shimmer of light. Back on the Persistence, the medical team rushed to treat the survivors and the injured Marcus. On the bridge, Thomas found Krell expertly maneuvering the ship away from the Vorax attackers. "The 3rd Vorax vessel is moving to intercept," Ellen reported. "We can't outrun all 3, Jane said from engineering. Thomas looked at the tactical display. Then he turned to Krell. "Remember those modifications we weren't sure would work? It's time to find out." Krell nodded in understanding. "The Alliance would never approve." "The Alliance isn't here," Thomas replied. "We are." "Activate the shield harmonics," Thomas ordered as the Persistence shuddered from another Vorax hit. "Jane, we need that power modulation now." In engineering, Jane worked frantically at her console. Ready in 5 seconds. The 3 Vorax ships closed in, their sleek, predatory forms visible on the view screen. Their weapons charged for another volley. "Harmony sequence engaged," Jane reported. The lights on the bridge dimmed momentarily, then brightened as a new energy pattern flowed through the ship. On the weapons console, Marcus's modified systems came to life. "Harmony shields at full power," Alan confirmed. The lead Vorax ship fired. A bright energy beam struck the Persistence, but instead of exploding against the shields, the energy seemed to flow around the ship like water. "It's working," Lisa exclaimed. "Shields absorbing 87% of incoming energy," Alan reported, his voice filled with surprise. "The modified emitters are redirecting the rest." Thomas turned to Krell, who stared at the readings with wide eyes. "This is impossible," Krell whispered. "Shield technology cannot absorb energy like this. It can when you tune the shield harmonics to match the frequency of the incoming weapons, Jane explained over the comm. The Alliance never tried because your shield doctrine is about deflection, not absorption. Another Vorax blast hit them, stronger than before. They're adjusting their weapons, Marcus warned from his medical bed. He had insisted on being moved to the bridge, where he lay on a portable cot with medical monitors attached to his chest. His head was bandaged, but his eyes were alert. Jane, can we use the absorbed energy? Thomas asked. Channeling to engines now, she replied. We'll have a burst of speed in 30 seconds. Thomas studied the tactical display. We need a clear path. Krell, on my mark. Take us between the lid ship and its wingman. Krell nodded, his four hands moving with precision over the navigation controls. Now, Thomas ordered. The Persistence surged forward, suddenly accelerating to speeds no Alliance ship of its size could achieve. It slipped between two Vorax vessels before they could react. Clear path to warp speed, Krell announced. Get us out of here, Thomas ordered. The stars stretched into lines as the Persistence jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the Vorax ships behind. In the sudden quiet of the bridge, the crew exchanged looks of relief and amazement. We did it, Lisa said softly. The survivors? Thomas asked. Medical reports all 43 are alive. Ellen replied. Some critical, but stable. Thomas turned to Marcus. That was too close. Your harmony shields saved us all. Jane's engine modifications gave us the speed, Marcus replied. And Krell's flying got us clear. Krell seemed surprised at the acknowledgement. I merely followed the captain's orders. You're part of this crew now, Thomas told him, official observer or not. Before Krell could respond, the comm system activated. The stern face of Admiral Turkin appeared on the view screen. Captain Reed, the Admiral's deep voice filled the bridge. The Dauntless reports you've rescued the Station Epsilon survivors. Explain your actions. Thomas straightened in his chair. We received their distress call and responded, Admiral. You were ordered to patrol sectors 18 through 22, the Admiral reminded him. Station Epsilon is in Sector 25. Yes, sir. We detected their emergency signal when no other ships could and determined immediate action was necessary. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. The Persistence is not equipped for rescue operations, especially in Vorax territory. You risked provoking an incident. With respect, Admiral, Thomas countered. We saved 43 lives. The station was already under attack when we arrived. Rendezvous with the Dauntless at coordinates 557 Mark 89, the Admiral ordered. Transfer the survivors and prepare for inspection. After the Admiral's image faded, Krell turned to Thomas. He did not sound pleased. No, Thomas agreed. But we did the right thing. 12 hours later, the Persistence docked alongside the massive cruiser Dauntless. Medical teams transferred the survivors, while Thomas and Krell boarded the larger ship to meet with Admiral Turkin. The Admiral's ready room was spacious and austere. He sat behind a large desk, studying a datapad. 17, he said without looking up. Sir, Thomas asked. You've violated 17 Alliance protocols with your modifications, Admiral Turkin stated coldly. He set down the pad and finally looked at Thomas. Then, unexpectedly, he added, and saved 43 lives that would have been lost had you followed them. Thomas remained silent, uncertain where this was heading. The lead researcher from Station Epsilon has requested to speak with you, the Admiral continued. He's waiting in the conference room. In the Dauntless conference room, the gray-skinned researcher from the station stood waiting. He looked much better than during the rescue, though still weak. Captain Reed, he greeted Thomas. I am Dr. Vren, Chief Scientist of Project Horizon. Doctor, Thomas nodded. I'm glad to see you recovering. Thanks to you and your crew, Vren replied. But I fear your timely rescue may only delay a greater disaster. Vren activated a holographic display showing the strange device. This is what we were researching at Station Epsilon, he explained. A Vorax prototype weapon we recovered from a derelict scout ship. The hologram zoomed in, revealing complex internal mechanisms. We discovered its purpose just before the attack. Vryn continued. It's designed to collapse subspace. Admiral Turkin, who had entered silently, stepped forward. Collapse subspace. Are you certain? Completely, Vryn confirmed. If deployed, these weapons could render vast regions of space impassable. Planets would be cut off from each other. The Alliance would be fragmented. The Vorax attacked to recover the prototype, Thomas realized. Yes, Vryn nodded. But our data indicates they have already built more. We detected energy signatures consistent with these weapons at 3 locations deep in Vorax space. The Admiral's face darkened. How long before they can deploy them? Weeks, Vryn replied. Perhaps days. Admiral Turkin turned away, his posture rigid. I must alert High Command immediately. Captain Reed, Officer Krell, remain here. After the Admiral left, Vryn studied Thomas with curious eyes. I've heard about your ship, the scientist said. How you've modified it beyond Alliance specifications. Word travels fast, Thomas remarked. Among scientists, yes, Vryn smiled slightly. Is it true your shields can absorb energy rather than deflect it? Thomas glanced at Krell, who nodded slightly. Yes, Thomas confirmed, along with other modifications. Vryn leaned closer. Then you may be our only hope. 2 hours later, Thomas found himself in a heated debate with Admiral Turkin and the captains of 6 other Alliance vessels. High Command has ordered all ships to defensive positions around core Alliance worlds, the Admiral announced. We will establish a containment perimeter, leaving the outer colonies undefended, Thomas pointed out. We cannot protect everything, Captain Lorith of the Dauntless argued. Strategic withdrawal is our only option until we develop countermeasures. That could take years, Thomas countered. By then, the Vorax will have cut off half the Alliance. What do you propose instead? Admiral Turkin asked, his tone making clear he expected no reasonable answer. Thomas activated the holographic display, showing a map of Vorax space. A counteroffensive, he said simply. Target the weapon facilities before they can deploy. The room erupted in protests. Impossible. Suicide mission. The Vorax fleet would destroy any approaching force. Admiral Turkin raised a hand for silence. One ship against the Vorax fleet. Even with your modifications, it would be suicide. Thomas displayed a simulation based on Allen's calculations. The Persistence isn't just modified, it's evolved. And it's the only ship in the fleet the Vorax won't recognize. We can slip past their defenses, reach the weapon facilities, and neutralize them. The room fell silent as the simulation played out, showing the Persistence evading Vorax detection systems. This is based on what? Captain Lorith asked skeptically. Our encounter with the Vorax ships, Thomas explained. We analyzed their sensor patterns, weapon frequencies, and shield harmonics. The Persistence can be tuned to slip through their detection grid. Krell stepped forward. I have witnessed these humans' capabilities firsthand, Admiral. What seems impossible to us is methodology to them. Admiral Turkin studied the simulation again. And if you're detected? Thomas met his gaze steadily. Then we fail, and your defensive strategy proceeds as planned. You lose nothing by letting us try. Later, in his temporary quarters aboard the Dauntless, Thomas received a message from the Admiral. Permission granted. Limited resources will be provided. Success unlikely but attempt authorized. When Thomas returned to the Persistence, he found his crew waiting on the bridge. Well? Jane asked. We're going in, Thomas announced. One ship against the Vorax. Instead of fear, he saw determination in their eyes. What exactly have we turned this ship into? Krell asked, now more curious than condemning. Something the Alliance would never build, Jane answered with a slight smile. A requiem. Thomas looked around at his crew. At Jane with her engineering genius, at Marcus still recovering but ready to fight, at Lisa with her steady confidence, at Alan with his brilliant mind, and at Krell, once an observer, but now truly one of them. The Persistence was supposed to be the weakest ship in the fleet, Thomas said. Instead, it's become our greatest hope. The Persistence moved silently through Vorax space, its energy signature disguised to mimic cosmic background radiation. On the bridge, the crew worked with quiet efficiency, each person aware of the stakes. 3 days had passed since they left Alliance territory. 3 days of careful navigation through sensor nets and patrol routes. 3 tense, dangerous days. Status. Thomas asked, his voice low despite the fact that no one could hear them in the vacuum of space. Still undetected, Lisa reported from communications. Their patrol ships have passed within 5,000 kilometers twice without changing course. Our modifications are working better than expected, Alan added from the science station. At this rate, we'll reach the primary weapon facility in 6 hours. Jane's voice came over the comm from engineering. Captain, I need you down here. There's something you should see. In engineering, Jane stood beside a holographic display of the ship's systems. The image rotated slowly, showing new connections and pathways that hadn't existed when they started their journey. What am I looking at? Thomas asked. Evolution, Jane replied. The quantum harmonics we installed are adapting. They're creating new pathways, new connections. Is it dangerous? Jane shook her head. Not dangerous, but unexpected. The ship is becoming more than the sum of its modifications. It's becoming something new. Can you control it? For now, Jane said. But I think, she hesitated. I think we need to let it happen. Thomas studied her face. You've been planning this. It wasn't a question, but Jane nodded anyway. Since we first received this assignment, I saw the potential in this old ship. The Alliance considered it obsolete, but that meant there were fewer restrictions, fewer safety protocols locking down its systems. What exactly will it become? Thomas asked. Jane met his eyes. A perfect weapon. One use, one purpose. A final requiem for our enemies. Thomas understood. And the cost? The ship, Jane said simply. Maybe more. Back on the bridge, Thomas found Krell studying sensor readings with Alan. The alien looked up as Thomas entered. We've detected the weapon facility, Krell reported. It's heavily defended. 12 Vorax warships and a planetary defense grid. Show me, Thomas ordered. The main view screen displayed an asteroid belt surrounding a small planetoid. The Vorax had built their facility inside the largest asteroid, using the others for camouflage and protection. Their defenses are too strong for a direct approach, Marcus observed from the weapons station. He had recovered enough to return to duty, though he still moved carefully. Even with our modifications, we can't fight through that. We won't have to, Thomas replied. Jane has been working on something. He turned to the rest of the crew. I need everyone in the conference room. Now. In the small conference room adjacent to the bridge, Thomas explained Jane's discovery and her plan. The faces around the table grew solemn as they understood what it would mean. It's a one-way mission, Lisa said quietly. Not necessarily, Jane countered. If we time it perfectly, we might be able to get to the escape pods before the final sequence completes. Might, Marcus repeated. The odds are low, Jane admitted. But the plan will work. The Vorax weapon will be neutralized, and their entire program disrupted. Krell had remained silent, his 4 eyes fixed on the table. Now he looked up. Now I understand, he said quietly. You never built this ship to return. Thomas didn't confirm or deny it. This is a volunteer mission. I won't order anyone to stay. The Dauntless is waiting at the rendezvous point. Anyone who wants to leave can take the shuttle. No one moved. We started this together, Marcus said. We finish it together. One by one. They nodded in agreement. Very well, Thomas said. Let's begin the final modifications. For the next 5 hours, the crew worked to prepare the ship. Jane led the process, reconfiguring systems and programming the final sequence. The Persistence would become more than just a delivery system. It would become the weapon itself. As they neared the facility, Thomas looked around the bridge at his crew, at the people who had become his family over these past months. They had taken the worst ship in the fleet and transformed it into something remarkable. And now, they would make the ultimate sacrifice. Approaching optimal position, Alan announced. Thomas nodded. Begin approach sequence. The Persistence moved forward, still cloaked from Vorax sensors. They glided through the asteroid belt, avoiding debris with precise maneuvers. They've detected something, Lisa suddenly reported. Not us specifically, but they're scanning this sector more intensively. Time to target, Thomas asked. 4 minutes, Krell replied from navigation. Maintain course, Thomas ordered. Jane, status. Final sequence ready, she reported from engineering. I set the triggers. Once we're in position, the process will be irreversible. The Persistence continued its approach, drawing closer to the massive asteroid that housed the Vorax weapon facility. They were less than 2 minutes away when everything changed. Multiple ships moving to intercept. Marcus called out. They'd spotted us. The view screen showed 3 Vorax vessels breaking formation, turning toward the Persistence with weapons charging. They're hailing us, Lisa reported, surprise in her voice. Open a channel, Thomas ordered. The image of a Vorax commander appeared on screen. The alien's reptilian features were set in a snarl. Alliance vessel, the commander hissed. You have entered Vorax space illegally. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Thomas looked at his crew, then back at the Vorax. I'm afraid we can't do that. He signaled Lisa to cut the transmission. They're locking weapons, Marcus reported. Jane, we need the final sequence now, Thomas ordered over the comm. We're not in optimal position, she protested. It's now or never, Thomas replied. Vorax ships firing, Marcus shouted. Energy beams struck the Persistence, but instead of causing damage, the modified shields absorbed the energy, glowing brighter with each hit. Final sequence initiated, Jane announced. The ship is resonating. The lights on the bridge changed from standard white to a deep, pulsing blue. The deck plates hummed beneath their feet as the ship's systems harmonized. What are you doing? The Vorax commander demanded, his transmission forcing its way onto their view screen. Thomas smiled slightly. The weakest ship in the fleet becomes its strongest weapon. The Vorax ships fired again, more desperately now. The Persistence absorbed every hit, growing stronger each time. 1 minute to completion, Jane reported. Escape pods are ready, but we need to launch now if we're going. Thomas looked around at his crew. No one moved toward the escape routes. The Alliance needs to know if this works, Thomas said. Krell, take the shuttle. Bring them the data. Krell shook his head, all 4 of his hands working steadily at his console. My place is here, Captain, with my crew. As the Persistence reached the weapon facility, Jane's voice came over the comm one last time. 30 seconds. The ship has reached harmony. The entire vessel now glowed with absorbed energy, every system perfectly aligned with the others. The Vorax ships continued to fire, not realizing they were only making the Persistence stronger. 10 seconds. Jane counted down. Thomas stood from his command chair. It's been an honor serving with all of you. 5 seconds. The crew joined Thomas, standing together as the ship prepared for its final purpose. The Persistence, Thomas said softly, a fitting name after all. The ship reached the heart of the Vorax facility and initiated its final sequence, the controlled subspace inversion, the very principle the Vorax weapon was based on, but refined and perfected by human ingenuity. In its final moments, the Persistence didn't just destroy the Vorax weapon. It created a subspace beacon that rendered their entire weapons program useless. The frequency of the beacon would disrupt the precise conditions needed for their technology to function. The light grew blinding. And then, silence. 6 months later, Admiral Turkin stood before the newly constructed memorial at Alliance headquarters. The monument depicted not just the crew of the Persistence, but the ship itself. Beside the memorial stood a new class of vessels incorporating human design principles, named Phoenix Class. An aide approached the admiral. "Sir, the Vorax delegation has arrived for the peace talks." Turkin nodded. "Tell them I'll be there shortly." As the aide left, Turkin looked back at the memorial, reading the inscription. "They transformed our weakest ship into our greatest triumph." The admiral touched the cold stone. "No," he said quietly, echoing words reported from the Persistence's final transmission. "They transformed our thinking. The ship was just the beginning." The Phoenix-class vessel in the dock powered up its engines, the blue glow of its quantum harmonics casting light across the memorial. The weakest ship had become the strongest example, and the legacy of the Persistence would guide the Alliance into a new era.